Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. We're in a real big treat to have one of the greatest health powers of knowledge in the world to speak for you tonight. And some of you may have saw the ad in the Desert Sun. We ran a couple of nice ads. But Dr. Wallach is just on a crusade always to try to help the everyday people like us to become more empowered about health and be able to learn how to fix ourselves generally. He's a great researcher, author, lecturer, pathologist, and just a great human being. He's trying to help everybody he can in the face of health and what's going on in the world today. So without further ado, Dr. Joel Wallach, can we bring you on, Doc?
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate the great introduction. Appreciate each and every one of you being here, near the holidays and everything. Appreciate you. Now, just ask a couple of questions so I know who I'm talking to, so I don't have to be redundant. How many of you have heard me speak live before? Okay, all the believers are over here. All the new ones are over here. Very good. All right.
Just like church.
Just like church. And then, don't open them now while I'm talking, please. Okay. All the crunchy, crinkly stuff.
Leave it for later.
Yeah, give it back to him.
Leave it for later.
Yeah.
All right, later.
Yeah, don't give out crunchy things while I'm talking.
Okay. Save it for a break.
Oh. Potato chips are death. Okay. I know there's at least one healthcare professional in here. Any others? Yes. What is it you do?
I'm a preventive doc.
Okay, very good. And where'd you go to school?
Loma Linda.
All right, fabulous. Are you a Seventh-day Adventist?
I'm not,
Okay.
but I'm a believer.
All right, very good. Anybody else a healthcare professional? Yes, sir.
Bruce Hagan, I'm a chiropractor.
Chiropractor. Love you
I'm
guys.
in a family of 25 chiropractors.
Whoa. What's your average age? Your death.
I'm the oldest, I'm almost 84.
Any other?
I have 3 sons that are chiropractors. I screwed up with the fourth. He became a lawyer.
Oh my gosh. We'll forgive you. Forgive him, Lord. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. And just for those of you who don't know me very well, basically the thing that makes my view different on health is I have a degree in agriculture. My major was in animal husbandry and nutrition. My minor was in field crops and soils. You learn about soil nutrition and plant physiology and that kind of stuff. Went to veterinary school, became a veterinarian, became a comparative pathologist, got a postdoc in comparative pathology, worked with Marlon Perkins from the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom days in the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems, Washington University in St. Louis. And that one project was an NIH project looking to see if pollution had any impact upon health, kind of prevention kind of stuff. And actually wound up doing some 20,000 autopsies in that one project, some 17,000 and some change in over 454 species of zoo animals and 3,000 human beings. Did a second project in China with Dr. Milan, and we did 1,700 autopsies on kids that are under age 10 that died of a single disease, which we'll talk about in a minute. And again, you'll know why later, but I went back to school and became a primary care physician as a naturopathic physician. We've been licensed in California for about 5 years now. My license in California is 061, so I'm very proud of that. I got below 100. Okay. Now, with all that said, you've come here for some information on health, I'm assuming. And what you're going to hear here, H-E-A-R-H-E-R-E, what you're going to hear here is something that's 180 degrees from what you've been taught. This is based on the animal industry because in the animal industry we don't have health insurance. And by not having health insurance, a veterinarian is obligated to cure the animal very quickly, 1 or 2 visits. Otherwise, the owner doesn't bring them back, or the farmer doesn't call you back. They just eat the cow, eat the pig. They're not going to do a hip replacement on a chicken, you know, that kind of stuff. So you have to fix them very quickly. And there's no insurance to pay for long-term therapy. In humans, on the other hand, the worst possible thing that could have happened for a human health is insurance. You'll see why in a moment. And it's the worst possible thing that could have happened. And so this is going to impact how the presentation goes. If you would, even though we have a small sort of intimate crowd here, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A afterwards, so if you just hold the comments and questions until then, I'll be sure that we get that done. People always ask me, why do you come up with the title, Dead Doctors Don't Lie? Back in 1992, I actually did a survey through the Journal of the American Medical Association. I read 200 of those issues for like 10 years previous, added up all the obituaries in there, then divided by the 200 magazines, and the average was 58. And I said, why would you go to a group of people whose average lifespan is 58 to learn how to live to be 100 in a healthful way? And so people say, well, why is that? And I said, well, only dead doctors don't lie. It just came out of my mouth, so that's where the title came from. Let's go back to the beginning. Whatever that was, there's all kinds of argument when the beginning was. But in the beginning, when people began to ponder on these things, everybody thought the disease was caused by evil spirits. If you burn enough goats to the good spirits, they would protect you from the bad spirits. If you didn't burn enough goats, or some of your enemies would burn more goats to the bad spirits, they'd put evil spells on you, get plagues and disease and that kind of stuff. And even doctors bought into that back in the old days. How long have human beings been around? Well, the Bible doesn't really tell you. It just says there's a progression. The earth was formed, and then the gaseous stuff turned into water, and then there were plants, and then there were animals, and then there were people. So we really don't know, and a lot of people will guess at various ages. I found it kind of fascinating. They were working, and this just came out December 3rd of this year, 2013, and what they did was they were digging a hole in Spain to build some big building, and they ran into a cave that nobody knew about. They found 28 full skeletons, and they knew they were human beings because they took DNA. The DNA was still recognizable because we had the genome come out in 2001, and the DNA in these 28 skeletons was human, and they dated them using argon and carbon dating 300,000 years ago. Now, whether you believe that or not doesn't bother me because I don't know whether to believe it or not, but that's what their dating system said. All I know is that I believe that everything on earth was created by God, so it doesn't matter what we think about when it was formed or earth. It's all formed by Him, so who cares the date? But anyway, they said 300,000 years ago. That's when they started thinking about evil spirits. We know that there was different types of human beings, just like there are today, and there's different species or varieties or types of dogs and cats and so forth. The same thing is true of people. And again, from skeletons they find in caves, and they do DNA, maternal DNA, and paternal DNA, and all this kind of stuff. And they found out that these guys were sort of swingers. They found that one father was having babies from 20 different types of human beings. He was a traveling salesman probably, right? And so that was kind of fascinating. I thought that they could tell from the female mitochondria who was doing what and so forth back in those days in certain areas. I thought that was kind of fascinating. And then, of course, eventually people began to believe in one God instead of lots of gods and things, and they built huge structures. This is one rendition of the Tower of Babel, and of course this was meant to be where people could pray and knowledge was accumulated and so forth. And these things all fell, even though they were grand edifices, they fell into just dust because they really weren't the answer to what causes disease, this, that, and the other. But it was man's attempt to try and find out and how to control those things. Then religion really got into the deal, and there was a difficulty in determining whether a person was a priest or a physician. A lot of them were both in those days, in the old days. And so it was kind of interesting. And then again, they found some wondrous things in these old caves. some of these cave drawings. I probably should move this farther up front. The old cave drawings are they were dated, carbon dating, 28,000 years ago. And right after the Second World War, like in 1946, Pablo Picasso was taken in there, in these French caves, and he came out and he said, and he was crying, he's weeping, with just humility. He said, those people 28,000 years ago knew more then than we know now. Just think about it. The pigments they put together lasted 28,000 years. You have to paint your house every 5 years. Okay, so they knew stuff. Now, whether they knew the chemistry or not, probably not, but they knew that some stuff lasted and some stuff didn't. And they were quite clever back, if that's true dating, 28,000 years ago. Some of them, different pictures, they say went back as far as 32,000 years ago. Then people began to realize that there were herbs and all kinds of weird stuff that would help people with health. And alchemy. How many of you have heard of alchemy? Okay, this is where they wanted to transmute lead into gold, that kind of stuff, those kind of people. And they felt that if a person could learn how to convert, these were the spiritual ones, these were in the beginning, before there were charlatans and all that kind of stuff. But in the beginning they said, you know, if we know enough to convert lead into gold, which is kind of a godlike practice, turning lead into gold, we should be able to come up with what's called the panacea. And the panacea was the cure for everything. And that was the goal of the spiritual ones in the beginning, the alchemists. Their whole goal was to find the panacea, the cure-all thing, the one silver bullet that would cure everything. Okay, so that's what alchemy was about. And then along came, in the early 1800s, two people. One was called Charles Darwin, and the other one, Gregor Mendel. How many of you heard of Charles Darwin? Okay, good. How many have heard of Gregor Mendel? Okay, well, Gregor Mendel was an interesting guy. He was a monk, and he, a Trappist monk, and he lived on these little farms, and the bishop picked him, for whatever reason, to run hot houses so they could have peas during the wintertime. All the priests, the Catholic priests, wanted peas during the wintertime. So Gregor Mendel was appointed to run these hot houses and grow peas. Well, he had several varieties, had red flowered ones and white flowered ones. And every once in a while, pink flowered ones would show up. And he'd breed the pink flowered ones back to the white flowered ones, and they would always come out white. And he'd breed the pink ones back to the red flowers, and they'd always come out red, but he'd breed two pink ones together and you get pink. And so he learned about recessives and dominants in the early 1800s. He didn't know the words, and he didn't know the science and everything, but he was recording. He was a mathematician by training, and so he recorded all the stuff 1 to 4 and all the stuff we know about genetics today. Gregor Mendel came up with that in the early 1800s. Darwin did not know about him, but Gregor Mendel knew about Darwin. Okay? And Darwin, most people don't know about him, although they've heard of him. They really don't know much about him. Why was he chosen to be the guy to sail around the world on the HMS Beagle? He was chosen. He didn't rent a ship. Why was he chosen? Well, he was chosen to go around the world because he had written several papers in biology journals on the polyps that make reefs. And the British Navy had trouble with their ships in these harbors, which were deep enough to be good harbors for the ships, but when a wind would come, it'd blow the ships up on the shore and uncontrollably wreck them and all this kind of stuff. And they read his stuff and they said, you know, this guy can build artificial reefs into these harbors because he knows how reefs are formed by these little polyps. He knew how they reproduced and he knew the chemistry of how they actually put together these reefs. So they hired him for 2 years to go around and build these reefs to protect and shelter these deep water harbors that the British Navy had their ships. And he was so successful at it, they hired him for another 3 years. So in the 5 years he was working on the HMS Beagle, he went around the world 5 times. Nobody, even Christ, didn't go around the world 5 times as a human being. Christ only stayed in the Middle East, right? Well, here's this guy, goes around the world. He sees things that nobody else on earth has ever seen. And he writes them all down. He collects bird eggs that have been cracked open. The bird hatches out. He collects the bird eggs. He shoots them and taxidermies them, and he saves feathers. He collects all these plants. He was a botanist and a birder and all these kind of things. He was a farmer. He went to medical school. I mean, this guy was very knowledgeable. He was one of the first people they call a polymath. How many of you heard of the term polymath? Okay, good. Well, Darwin was one of the first people called a polymath because he was an expert in so many different fields. They chose the right guy. They didn't know it, but they chose the right guy to make these trips. And he would see stuff like this. These chin-strapped breed of penguins in the Antarctic, these southern islands in the Atlantic, just below the Antarctic Circle, or just above it, depending on how you're facing, right? It was just a miracle. He'd see this stuff, and from a farmer from England to see stuff like this, it just blew his mind. And he's collecting these things and, you know, killing a few and skinning them and taxidermy and putting them all together. And he realized that no matter what it was, whether it was penguins or giraffes in Africa or human beings and different types of human beings from the island people and so forth, that everybody passed on information. You get two redheads, they'll always have red-headed kids. Now, if a black-haired person has a baby with a red-headed person, those kids will always be black-haired unless the black-haired guy had a relative way back that was redhead. And so every fourth baby would come out a redhead. And so, and Charles Darwin is kind of like Gregor Mendel with his pea plants. That's why they say that Gregor Mendel knew about his stuff, but Darwin didn't know about Gregor Mendel. So all this is kind of happening, and the information is being collected. He wrote it up in papers. And then, of course, Darwin wrote his famous book, right? The Origin of Species. Now, Darwin, when he wrote The Origin of Species, which is in the early 1800s, about 1838, something like that, his cousin, a guy by the name of Francis Galton. How many of you have heard of Francis Galton? Ooh, bad guy. Okay, now Francis Galton started something. He started a kind of pseudoscience in the beginning where he was measuring people's heads and trying to determine their intelligence and that kind of stuff. But he called his science eugenics. How many of you have heard of eugenics? Okay. Well, eugenics, to make a long story short, wound up being this. Okay? Now, remember, Hitler was trying to make the perfect race by killing off all the ones that were imperfect for whatever reason. That was Galton's theory, because Galton was Darwin's cousin. He was a very wealthy guy. He dropped out of medical school twice because he inherited the farm. He inherited his father's money. He says, why should I be looking at people's hemorrhoids? I'm a gentleman farmer, so I'm going to do something else. So he came up with a science saying, you know, we can speed up human evolution. Because he knew about selective breeding for cows and horses and sheep and pigs and chickens and stuff like that. You know, you have a cow that doesn't give much milk, you eat her. You have a cow that gives a lot of milk, you save all her female calves and breed them in hopes of getting that information, more cows giving more milk kind of thing. That's called selective breeding. He says, we'll do that with humans. And he was sort of a compassionate guy, so he didn't start out killing people, but he started out with a dating club is what essentially it was. The first dating club. And all he wanted to come to these dating clubs, he invited them through the newspapers and that kind of stuff. Didn't have the internet and radio, he just threw newspaper ads. He had this dating club, and all he wanted to attract was tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. Kind of sound familiar? Now, and by 1904, 1910 in there, every state in the United States had a eugenics office in every state. The federal government had a eugenics department. And between 1895 and 1930, the American government paid doctors to forcibly sterilize 400,000 Americans who they considered feeble-minded, illiterate, people who had birth defects, people who were habitual petty criminals, you know, shoplifters and kind of stuff like that. And the sheriffs would go out and grab them, take them to the doctor, give the doctor a $100 bill, and they'd sterilize them. Doctors loved it. They were willing participants. They never said, no, wait a minute here, you better show me a court order. They just took the $100 and cut their testicles off or did a hysterectomy on them. 400,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized. Every country in Europe had a eugenics department. It kind of went crazy. Well, Hitler was in jail for 20 years, and guess what he read in that 20 years in jail? All of Francis Galton's stuff and all of Charles Darwin's stuff. When he came out, he was an expert on eugenics. And he wanted to build Germany into the perfect race because we had cut Germany up after the First World War so it could never be a world power again. Germany used to run, before the First World War, all the way from Russia all the way to Spain. All the other countries like Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Poland were provinces in Germany. Germany was the biggest European country in Europe. It was huge. It was bigger than all of them combined. And that's why they were so powerful. Well, they broke them up, the League of Nations after the First World War so that would never happen again. Well, they're all starving. And so it was easy. When Hitler got out of jail, the Kaiser made him chancellor without even an election. He says, Hitler, save us. So Hitler says, I will. We just have to get rid of the riffraff. He starts killing people. We have to take over the world. Why? I have radio interviews of him. I have all his speeches he used to give to his troops. He'd say things like, if we superior people don't take over the earth, the insects will wind up eating us all. So we have to kill out the ones that are inferior and only breed those that are superior. Because he'd been reading Francis Galton stuff and Charles Darwin stuff for 20 years in prison. Okay? So that's where this came from. I think you get the picture here. So we're going to get into the science now. But I just want to kind of give you that little background, and you'll begin to recognize some of this stuff as we go through here based on everything I've just showed you. This is a cover article, Time magazine. Came out in December of 2008. We Americans, each year, according to the World Health Organization, according to the Center for Disease Control, the Department of Health and Human Services, the federal government, the Senate, the House, we spend more money each year for health care than all the countries in the world combined. There's 204 nations registered in the United Nations. We spend more money for health care each year than all the world combined. What do we get for it? We're 92nd in healthfulness. There's 91 other nations whose peoples are healthier than us. We're 60th in longevity. There's 59 other nations whose peoples live longer than us. And God forgive us, we rank 41st when it comes to live births and first month survivability of our babies. You wouldn't tolerate this in any other industry. The reason why you tolerate it is because there's insurance. Why should I spend $2 out of my own pocket when insurance will pay for everything? I don't care if it kills me or it killed my mom and 3 of my kids. It's free. And sock it to me. Give it to me. You know, when you put a new roof on your house, you get 3 bids, don't you? You check the Better Business Bureau to see if there's complaints about their services. You put rugs in your house, you get 3 bids, and you check the Better Business Bureau. You get landscaping done, and they're putting in sprinkler systems, you get 3 bids, and you call the Better Business Bureau. When your doctor, who's been your doctor for 20 years, says, you know, you got a bad heart, I'm going to cut your heart out and put some dead guy's heart in, you say, oh, okay, insurance will pay. Is that insane, or is that insane? Well, the title of this article is The Sorry State of American Health. Despite advances in medicine, despite technological advances in medicine, Americans are less healthy than we used to be. Remember, this is December 2008, 5 years ago. Despite advances, technological advances in medicine, Americans are less healthy than they used to be. And the most important part of the sentence is, in the next generation, your kids are going to be worse off. Now, raise your hand if you've heard that our kids are not going to live as long as us. Okay, that's at least 60, 70% of the people in the room. Now, that's a horrifying thought to understand that according to all the records, it shows that we rank 41st in the world, despite all this money we're putting out, we rank 41st in the world for live births and first month survivability of babies, and that doesn't include abortions or anything like that. That's just natural births and so on. And what they're saying is 75% of American couples who have babies are going to be standing at a gravesite burying their babies. I cannot imagine a more horrifying thing to contemplate is to be burying a young child from something that was totally preventable. Just so you don't think I'm giving you screwy numbers, I threw this one in. October 2011, in ranking of live births and newborn deaths, we rank 41st. They say it's a USA shame. Now that's absolutely positively not true. You put up more money than all the countries in the world put together. It's not your shame. It's the providers of the services' shame. Veterinary record's not that bad. Somebody needs to go to jail. Okay? The reason why this happens is there's no consequences. In 1914, exactly 100 years ago, there was a report that was commissioned by the Rockefeller Institution and the Carnegie Institute. It was called the Flexner Report. The Flexner Report was a report that was made by a retired college president who was hired by the Rockefellers and the Carnegies to go around and look at all the 132 medical schools and classify them. They found that out of the 132 of them, 100 of them were herbal schools, homeopathic schools, chiropractic schools, that kind of stuff. He said, you know, they're just hokey-pokey schools. The real schools, the 32 that are left, the medical schools, are the ones that use prescription drugs. Of course, Rockefeller liked that because they're all made out of petroleum, right? He liked that. And so they didn't hurt directly the 100 homeopathic schools and herbal schools and nutritional schools and that kind of stuff. But what they did do is pour millions of dollars, which is like trillions of dollars a day. They poured millions of dollars into these 32 medical schools, and all the students went whoosh that direction. That's where all the keen new tools were. That's where the best professors were. That's where the money was at. Everybody got a grant to go there for nothing. Because the Rockefellers and the Carnegies were saying, hey, when they get out of school, they're going to get our prescriptions out there to the public. Well, at that time, put your keys in your purse because you're rattling your keys.
Could you move one more, ma'am, please?
Yeah, you need to move this way, too, because you're in front of the camera. Thank you. Thank you. So, you'll have to edit that. So, basically, 100 years ago, almost to the date, not only did what we would call orthodox medical schools get all this money and rose to the top, not because of skill and benefit to their patients, just because of money. They also legislated themselves into being a protected monopoly. They're the only legal monopoly in America is the medical school. MD medicine. They're the only legal monopoly in America. Everybody else is a quack. Just ask them. By legislation, they legislated all their competition, all their legitimate competition, into being fifth-class citizens. Insurance doesn't pay for quacks and fifth-class citizens. They only pay MDs. When you look at the military, you look at the government, they only recognize MDs. So we have this huge problem because the skills that one MD has are similar to the skills that another one has. There's not much difference between them. And so it doesn't matter if they're a nice guy and they go to church. That's meaningless because they all use the same medicine. They all use the same procedures. So there's no options. And that's why we're in trouble. Okay? Now remember, we already all agreed, or at least 70% of us agreed, that our kids are in trouble. Because if you think we're in trouble, our kids are 1,000 times more trouble than we are. The age group has the fastest growing rate of MS, multiple sclerosis, are kids under the age of 12. They're now diagnosing MS in kids under the age of 2, 16 months, 18 months. Historically, it was a disease of 35 to 50-year-olds, middle-aged people. What's going on here? Well, this is free radical damage to the myelin, the insulation material in the brain. And after school, Grandma takes the 6-year-old or the 10-year-old to one of these fast food places and gets them a shake. It's not a milkshake, it's made out of oil. It's, one of these soft serve shakes. It's oil, free radical damage. It oxidizes, turns into trans fatty acids and screws up their brains. So now Grandma is the one who's inflicting, out of ignorance, she's inflicting MS on these little kids because of free radical damage in their brains. Here's a NASCAR driver. He and his 3 brothers and sisters all have MS. It's not genetic. But his mother made sure they all had salads and put olive oil in everything. Olive oil, coconut oil, trans fatty acids, free radicals. Bam! You have MS. The whole family's got it because Mama insisted they eat salads and make sure they put lots of vinegar and oil on their salads. But my doctor said that was healthy. Well, your doctor only lives to be 56. Why would you believe him? And when it comes to stroke, the age group that has the fastest growing rate of stroke in the United States are kids under the age of 18. Stroke is not genetic. Stroke doesn't just happen. It's not the bad God on Mars creating stroke because you didn't burn enough goats to him. The reason why people have strokes is a simple deficiency or a ratio problem between omega-3s, 6s, and 9s. How many of you supplement your 2-year-olds with omega-3s? I don't see any hands going up. One, maybe. It's your responsibility because doctors know nothing about nutrition. Nothing. You're better off asking a hobo under the bridge who's dumpster diving behind McDonald's when it comes to nutrition, because he'll live longer than the doctor. As crazy as that sounds, they live longer than the doctor. Now, the fastest growing disease today in the industrialized world in kids is rickets. It's a physician-caused disease. Let's see, stay out of the sun, get skin cancer, put on SPF 7 billion sunblocker, long sleeves, gloves, big brim hats, shades. Don't go out after 9 in the morning. You stay inside until after dark. Stay inside doing your twittering and texting and making, all your computer stuff. Don't you eat egg yolks because you can get cholesterol damage to your heart. That's where you find vitamin D3 naturally. Don't you take vitamins and minerals because you can overdose. This is a physician-caused disease. It's a perfect storm. Everything doctors have told you about nutrition is the cause right now of every industrialized nation. The worst possible nutritional deficiency disease in kids is rickets. Rickets! In the 21st century. Because doctors know nothing about nutrition. Now, I want to talk briefly about birth defects. I'm going to take off my jacket because it's warming up in here, or I'm getting warmed up, one or the other. No, that's fine, thanks. I get no wrinkle stuff. I travel so much, I only get no wrinkle stuff. But at any rate, there's about 500 birth defects, congenital events. None of them are caused by genetics. There's not a single birth defect that's caused by genetic transmission, not a single one. We've learned this in the animal industry. We can prevent every birth defect you can name and 10 times that many you can by giving perfect preconception nutrition to the females. In humans, we wait until they've missed a period or two. I might be pregnant, go and get checked out. Yeah, here's some prenatal vitamins. Well, 6 weeks has already gone by. That embryo has been at risk for 6 weeks. Somebody needs to go to jail, and it's usually the OBGYN, because there's no consequences to a failed pregnancy. What if every time an OBGYN was in charge of a lady's health, female problems, and he says, okay, I'm going to be in charge of your pregnancies, and there's a baby born with a defect, there should be a penalty for him. Throw a few in jail, hang a few, guess what? I guarantee there wouldn't be any more birth defects after that. But now there's no consequences, so they don't care. Let's look at homosexuals and gay behavior. Let's look at another class of sexual problems. What about intersex? How many of you heard of intersex? Not intercourse, but intersex. What about hermaphrodites? That's another name for intersexes, hermaphrodites. They have both the male and female parts. And back before the days of the ultrasound, where they could look at a baby at 3-4 months along, they can tell you the gender, or if they're a hermaphrodite. Back in the old days, they had to wait till the baby was born. What is it? Oh my God, it's both. Well, what would they do? Well, first thing they would do is take a blood smear. They'd look for bar bodies. Bar bodies show up. Whoops, that's a Russian version. Bar bodies would show up in the females. Okay, there's these little dots on the inside of the nucleus, particularly white blood cells. These little spots there, you can see the arrow pointing to them. They're called bar bodies. They don't exist in the male, XYs, but they exist in females, XX, because they represent one of the 2 X chromosomes. And so when they would, the baby's still being wiped off in the delivery room, they take the blood smear, they run in, look under the microscope, they say, okay, there's bar bodies there. Genetically, this baby's a female, which is true. So they cut the penis off, cut the testicles off, and they do a little plastic surgery and they make them totally a female. Uh-oh, baby's 10 years old. Up here, the baby's a boy. Because there's two things going on when it comes to sex. One is the DNA, what you are, and then there's the preoptic hypothalamus, which covers eating drives, depression, sexual drives, and all that kind of stuff. And when you have a child that's born from a congenital event, let's call it a congenital event, if they're a homosexual or a gay male or a lesbian woman, they have about 30% of the cells that a heterosexual has in that preoptic hypothalamus. You can actually count the cells. You don't even need to know anything else. You just count the cells, and if they're below a certain level, they're going to be lesbian or gay. Because mama was missing something in the first 3 weeks of pregnancy when that part of the brain was being formed. OBGYN didn't warn her. She's out there having a great time. 1 out of 700 babies is born with sexual problems. It happened in the first 3 weeks of pregnancy. It's not a choice. It is not a choice. They're driven to be homosexual, gay, or lesbian from the time they're 3 weeks old and in pregnancy. You can't pray them well because it was determined at 3 weeks as an embryo. You understand what I'm telling you? This is based on 600 autopsies of gay and lesbian people. So, I love stuff like this. This is a brilliant move. I don't agree with most of President Obama's stuff, his policies, but this was beautiful. The Russians have a big thing against gay people. So who does he send over there for the Olympics to represent us? A gay athlete. I love it. I mean, that was a brilliant move. So these people are wonderful people, right? There's 10 times more heterosexual, what am I talking about? Heterosexuals who are pedophiles. There's 10 times more heterosexuals who are pedophiles than there are gay people. Okay? So you can't say, well, they're pedophiles. You can't do that because it's not true. Okay? So I thought this was a brilliant move. And I was up in Canada. This was a wonderful tear-jerking story. Here's two guys. They're married for 65 years. One died at 94. The other one died at 96. Two old uncles. They just harmless and, just were great members of the community and church members and did all kinds of things for the Rotary Club and the Lions Club and all that kind of stuff. And how can you say anything wrong with them? They're just wonderful human beings. Their mama just screwed up. Why? Because the OBGYN screwed up. Now, for those of you who don't know a lot of neuroanatomy, this is kind of a rendition of a human brain. So I can clarify this for you here. This one here, the hypothalamus, that arrow is pointing right to the preoptic hypothalamus, the part of the brain that's underdeveloped called hypoplasia, which means underdeveloped. And when it's underdeveloped, they're going to be a homosexual male or a gay male or a lesbian female. It's predictable as gravity. You can count the cells and you know. Okay? Now I do want to jump in here for a moment. I let somebody copy these things and they bent them all up, so I'm never going to let that happen again. Okay, but I do want to show you a couple more things here when it comes to congenital events in the human brain. I think it's important for you to know this because we're the parents and grandparents. It's not God versus science because God invented everything, even science, right? 1953, these two guys, one guy was an American, James Watson, the other guy was a British guy, Francis Crick. Watson and Crick, 1953, they came up with the double helix structure of DNA. 9 years later, 1962, they got the Nobel Prize for it. They really thought they had it figured out. They said, we now know what God knows about humanity, was their quote. All we have to do is be able to figure out how to make the normal gene and replace the bad gene. We can cure every disease. And of course, here's a chromosome. Really cool. These are telomeres. This will become important a little bit later. Telomeres. Okay, these determine how often this chromosome will be able to duplicate. Okay, as it duplicates, these get shorter and shorter. And one of the things for longevity is to figure out how to keep them from getting shorter and shorter. Okay, so remember that. But back in the old days, rich people, royalty, very wealthy merchants used to make collections of birth defects. Cleft palate, cleft lip, spina bifida, hydrancephalus, the brain was hanging out of the head, too many fingers, not enough arms, all that kind of stuff. They would save them in bottles of wine and alcohol and stuff, kind of a collector's item. My collection is bigger than your collection kind of thing. And those collections, 30,000 babies like that, 60,000 babies, you find them in all the European medical schools. They go back thousands of years, those collections. How many of you have heard of identical twins? Now, come on, I'm going to ask that again. Raise your hand. How many of you have ever heard? Okay, that's better. Identical twins. Now, you'd think identical twins would be identical, but they're not. DNA-wise, they're identical. DNA-wise, they're identical. You can't tell the difference. You do DNA testing on it, they're exactly the same. When you look at them, these two look like sisters to me. They don't look identical. This one's an inch shorter than that one. This one's face is wider. This one's face is longer. Even though she's shorter, her face is longer. Look at that. Okay? This is kind of a crazy situation. Their hairlines are different. And so they look like sisters to me. This one being the older one would be my guess if I didn't know they're identical twins. This whole issue of the National Geographic goes into this. It says, twins alike but not alike. And this goes back to the term epigenetics. How many of you heard of epigenetics? Okay, a couple of us. Okay, epigenetics. You'll learn that term. Okay, epigenetics are things that influence how your genes perform. Okay? Your genes do not sit in isolation. You can't take a handful of genes and throw them in. These would be perfect genes and just duplicate perfectly, right? You can take a handful of these perfect genes, throw them into a bucket of saline solution, say, okay, genes, go to it, duplicate. They're going to be like the tar baby. They ain't going to do nothing. Because they need raw materials, substrates, they need energy, right? They need all kinds of stuff. They need cofactors to make things work. Any of those things missing, they don't work. You put food on a table, this twin's going to eat differently than that twin. Even though the same food is on the table, I don't like icky broccoli. Oh, I love broccoli, kind of stuff. And so they affect how their genes will react based on what they're eating or not eating. Now, the first 91 days of pregnancy, everything is formed. The embryo, the human embryo, the animal embryo, is moving along an assembly line, kind of like the Ford cars. And if the guy who's supposed to be putting on the the fuel pump into the engine, has to go to the bathroom, he goes, take a pee, he goes back in the back and he doesn't stop the line, doesn't say, hey, come fill in for me while I'm doing that. He might come out and 15 cars have gone by then. So at the end of the line, there's 15 cars without a fuel pump. Because one of the pieces was missing during that time, right? Well, the same thing is happening to human babies. After the first 91 days, when the baby's forming, everything else is just growth. By 91 days, you got what you got. There ain't going back. There are some exceptions, but not many. Now, Sarah Palin, whether you liked her politics or not, she was a sexually active woman who is over 45 years of age, very high risk of having a Down syndrome baby. Now, her OBGYN should be put in jail forever. Because he should have said to her, Sarah, you're going to be out on the road out there eating hotel food and rubber chickens and all this kind of stuff. You'll be taking some serious vitamins and minerals because at your age, you're still cycling, you're sexually active, you better be taking the 90 essential nutrients. You better be taking all known essential nutrients, otherwise you're at a high risk to have a baby with Down syndrome. The OBGYN never said that. Never offered her any advice. And so, guess what happened to Sarah Palin? She had a baby born with Down syndrome. That OBGYN should go to jail. Then that would never happen again. But there's no consequences. Even for the governor of Alaska, even for the vice presidential candidate of the United States, her doctor screwed up that bad, and he didn't lose his license, didn't have his license suspended for 3 seconds, wasn't fined as much as a traffic ticket. There's no consequence. This will happen over and over and over and over. Oh, just what bad luck? No. It's bad or lack of advice. You wouldn't tolerate that kind of service from anybody else, from any other industry. In the old days, they'd be burned at the stake. The doctor would have been burned at the stake in the old days. A couple more and then we'll get back on the track here, but these are too much fun. Oh, here's the ones I've been looking for. The human brain, as it's forming, this is at 3 weeks of age, and this is when homosexuality occurs at that 3 week to 4 week level in here, when the hypothalamus is forming. And as the brain is going down the assembly line to get to this at 6 months of age, it requires a lot of stuff. I'm one of the guys that sued the FDA over folic acid. Without me suing them, back in the 90s, they still wouldn't have folic acid and prenatal vitamins. There would still be a high risk of spina bifida. I'm one of the guys that sued them for that. Okay? And so I'm very familiar with this kind of stuff. Cerebral palsy, totally preventable. This is an underdevelopment of the cerebellum, the part of the brain that deals with the fine motor movement. And you'll notice that people with cerebral palsy is kind of a spectrum. You get them that are barely affected, and it takes a professional neurologist to tell you that they got cerebral palsy. I mean, they might just kind of walk funny, and you think, God, that kid's already dancing. But they already have some early stage of cerebral palsy. Now, when a child is born, a normal baby, 6, 7, 8 pounds, their cerebellum is part of the brain that affects fine motor movement. It should be the size of a small tangerine. When they have cerebral palsy, that cerebellum could be the size of a plum, which is like 30% smaller. They're going to have cerebral palsy. Or they could be the size of a walnut, which is 60% smaller. They're going to have this type of cerebral palsy. Oh, he's got cerebral palsy kind of thing. And then you get this 11-year-old girl who has catastrophic cerebral palsy. The only thing she can move is her eyes. It costs $1 million a month to care for her. Between all the physical therapy and the speech therapy and this therapy and feeding tubes and enemas because she can't have a bowel movement, all this stuff. Plus, you know, a $100,000 machine so she can kind of with one finger move herself around, run over the chickens because she can't steer it very good and all that kind of stuff. This is because the mother was missing just a few pennies worth of stuff before pregnancy. Somebody needs to go to jail here. This just goes on and on and on and on. Now, her cerebellum, you can actually look, the CAT scan, the size of a pea. Her mother had severe deficiencies for longer periods of time, so that piece went down through that 91 days and never got enough to develop. And again, for those of you who don't know the anatomy, there's a cerebellum right here. Okay? This is this piece here. That's the piece that doesn't develop when you have cerebral palsy. Varying degrees of severity. This is one of my favorite slides. Everybody knows about belly button hernias. This kid's born with one the size of a walnut. You give him a hypnotic, not enough to put him under general anesthesia, but just enough to make him kind of drug-induced intoxication. You give him some local anesthesia, and in 10 minutes' time this is easily dealt with. But here's another belly button hernia. This one probably mama was missing some zinc for a week as the embryo goes from a disc into a tube, and this piece didn't get zippered up during development. Well, here's one. These two, next two, were on the autopsy table. These are, I'm a pathologist, so I see crazy stuff like this. This one, there was no skin over the belly button hernia, and the stomach and the spleen and some of the intestines were hanging out. And of course, it caused that child to life. It was a perfect baby, nothing wrong with that baby except a little belly button hernia. And the muscles incarcerated that circulation and all that stuff, and the baby dies of circulatory shock during the birth process. And here's one that's really wild. Same thing on the autopsy table. Here, the liver, the stomach, the spleen, all the intestines are out. That's a catastrophic belly button hernia. Totally avoidable. The OBGYN didn't have his license suspended for 3 seconds. Didn't have to pay a parking ticket. Got to walk. Now, if a mechanic scratches your car while he's rotating the tires, you sue him. Oh, this was just an act of God. No, it wasn't. It was a failure of the system. Same way here. You can find a good Christian doctor who would volunteer his time to sew up these kids. You can go to the Save the Children fund and get the $250 each for the anesthesia and the suture material. But all of this is totally preventable. Rich women, poor women, middle-class women all have babies with cleft palate and cleft lip. It's a simple nutritional deficiency in the embryo when it's closing up as a tube. How many of you have heard of babies being born deaf, congenital deafness? Very common. It's a deficiency of a single mineral, manganese. I don't know, there must be 200 studies on this back in the 50s and 60s. We know for a fact, as predictable as gravity, you can prevent congenital deafness and certain types of things that would look like cerebral palsy, called congenital ataxia, because the semicircular canals in the ears are all damaged from a lack of one mineral, manganese. Not magnesium, but manganese. There's a lot of prenatal vitamins that don't have manganese in them. Well, here's what the medical system is looking for. They're looking to decode the genes. There's 100 papers that show very clearly that this is caused by a manganese deficiency in the first few weeks of pregnancy. They're looking for the gene. Why? Because that's where the bucks are at. Another one of my favorites, and we're going to take after they clear up all these terrorists in Russia, we're going there. Beautiful little kids. In this little village in Russia, each year, 50% of the kids there are born with 100% of this birth defect. You'll know what I mean in a second. 25% are born with 25% of this birth defect, and the other 25% are born with a different type of variation on this birth defect. The doctors there tell them it's a genetics caused by radiation from the power plant 700 miles away. Caca. You know, that's a scientific word. Caca. Now, most people look at these kids. They're so cute, you don't really see the birth defect at first. But each of these kids is missing their left forearm. In that village, 50% every year, they're born with both forearms missing. 25% are born with their left forearm missing. 25% are born with their right forearm missing. Now, genetics don't work that way. Now, if they're all born with their right forearm missing, you could say, well, it has the possibility, it has a look of genetics, but I guarantee it wouldn't be. But, you know, you could say that. But with this variation, it's not. You just fourth grade biology, you know it's not. You don't need to spend millions of dollars trying to do tests. Okay? And so, in the near future, maybe when I'm 100 years old, we'll retire, and we'll go to Russia, and we'll take enough nutrients for all these sexually active women who are in the childbearing years, and give them a year's supply of this stuff. And that year, there will never be a baby born with that, but I guarantee you, the special nutrient called zinc is missing in that soil. This is type of limb deformities are caused by a zinc deficiency. Somebody needs to go to jail. Now, you know, there's all of these genetic screening tests. There's 850 of them. These biotech companies. I mean, there's a lot of biotech companies in California. Come up with all these tests for genetic diseases, right? There's a whole class of people now called patients in waiting. How many of you have heard of patients in waiting? These are ones that are diagnosed 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, diagnosed with one of these screening tests as having this birth defect, and they were going to die within a year or 5 years or develop the birth defect. And here we go 40 years later, and they don't ever get it. This little girl, doesn't she look bored? Even her dog looks bored. She's waiting. Her parents won't let her do anything because they were told that she had the genetics for cystic fibrosis. Nah, didn't happen. One more, and then we'll move on to the stuff that you came to hear. But I think you, as parents and grandparents, you need to hear this, because when presents are due, giving somebody a $50 Macy's gift card is nice, but it's not going to protect your kids and grandkids from these types of problems. You better be giving them the 90 essential nutrients. That'll be the best thing you can do. You'll add 25 to 50 healthy years to your life. You'll prevent all these birth defects. You're going to have to do it because the medical system's not going to do it. The government's not going to do it. You've got to do it. If you don't step up to the plate, then shame on you, because you can't unlearn what you just learned tonight. Okay, this will be the last one, because you'll get the drift. This fellow here, an eye doctor, a very successful eye doctor, very, he's an elder in the church and all this kind of stuff, and filled in for the pastor, good Christian man, had family. He volunteered his time for the Lions Club and raised money for eyeglasses and eye surgeries and all this kind of stuff, and did the Rotary Club and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When his youngest child, I reached 18 years of age, he went to Denver and had plastic surgery and became a she. Up here, he was a she, a preoptic hypothalamus. He knew that when he was 6 years old. But down here, he was a male. He was genetically a male, but because Mama was missing something, up here, he was a female. So went and had the surgery and became a female. Had to go to federal court to be able to play tennis in a world league as a female, because he had the DNA of a male. But he won in court. Kind of interesting stuff. Kind of wild stuff. Makes you think, doesn't it?
That was a Renee Richards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I know the guy who paid for him, gave him a grant to go to school to become an eye doctor. He's he's a billionaire. He's one of my patients. Okay. How many of you have heard of AARP? Okay. This is an issue of their monthly bulletin cover article, March 2012, a year and a half ago. The worst place to be in America when you're sick is an American hospital. I'll show you why they say that. I took two things out of the article, so you know where they're coming from. The number of American patients who die each year from American hospital errors is the same as 4 jumbo jets crashing each week. They say there's 1,500 people. That's 3,000 every 2 weeks. It's 6,000 a month, 72,000 a year. How many of you would fly commercial airlines if you knew that they killed 72,000 passengers every year? Nobody would fly. And yet you still go to a doctor. Now you think about it. They kill 72,000 of their customers every year from just simple mistakes. Hello? They don't even get their license suspended for 3 seconds. Nobody goes to jail. They don't get a parking ticket. People say, Wallach, why are you so rough on doctors? My wife is a microsurgeon from Harvard, for God's sakes. Why am I so rough on doctors? Well, if they didn't give me the material, I couldn't do it, could I? This is not my figures. Newsweek magazine cover article. The one word that will save your life in a hospital in America is a 2-letter word that every 2-year-old knows. No! You failed 4 rounds of chemotherapy. We have this new experimental drug we want to use on you. No! How long do I have to live? Well, without this drug, you might live 2 weeks. Good, send me home. If you only have 2 weeks to live, wouldn't you rather be in your own home with your own bed, with your cat on your lap, and your grandkids hugging you, you're passing on your advice to them, instead of dying in the hospital being poisoned by a bunch of money-crazed doctors? Doesn't that make better sense? If they say you only have 2 weeks to live, say, bye-bye, boys and girls, I'm going home so I can hug my grandkids. Instead of your grandkid comes to see you in the hospital and they say, honey, you can't see Grandma right now. She's busy being killed by the doctor. This is my favorite of all favorites because they list the source of all their information. This is a full-page article in the USA Today. Came out February 5th, 2007. And the information was based on the basis of the article. The title is self-evident here, Patient Protect Thyself. they said the sources, and it came from the Institute of Medicine, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Center for Disease Control, the federal agency that tracks all this stuff. I mean, we're talking extremely respectable stuff. The Journal of the American Medical Association is the most reputable medical journal in America, maybe even the world. Most highly respected. I mean, even if you don't like doctors, you got to admit to that, right? So that's where they got the information from. What they said was, it was a full-page article. I had to chop it up to get it on here. They said, each year in America, yearly, American doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their customers in their workplace. They kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their customers in their workplace. American doctors kill, injure, and infect more people each year in America than the mafia has in 1,000 years. You're quiet because you get it. Let's see. This one is from Wednesday, November 2012. Johnson & Johnson to pay $2.4 billion in hip implant suits. This represents 10 million hip implant patients. Why on earth would you get a hip implant? Insurance pays. As I say, the worst possible thing for human health in America was the insurance system. It causes this to be attractive to people. Your doctor says, well, you don't fit that profile. You'll be fine. Oh, okay. And you die during surgery. Or you get an infection. They amputate your leg at the hip. Or the thing breaks apart in you, and they have to go back in there and deal with it. Oh, so you get $20,000. Yahoo. There's another one of my favorites because it deals with animals and people. Remember, I'm a veterinarian and a physician. This one is from the Center for Disease Control, that federal agency, again, that tracks this kind of stuff, CDC. Remember I said earlier that according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Center for Disease Control, each year in America, medical doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their customers in their workplace. Infections in hospital. This does not include infections from private practices and group practices and all that kind of stuff. Just hospitals each year, according to the CDC, medical doctors infect 2 million people, of which 90,000 die every year. This is a yearly figure. 90,000 die from the infections inflicted upon their customers in their workplace. What would happen to Taco Bell if they were to infect and kill 90,000 customers? They wouldn't be open for 3 breaths. I mean, they would be gonzo. You think about it. You make sure you'll vote for somebody because they'll vote you in insurance that'll pay the doctor. Can anybody name me an insurance policy that prevents or cures disease? You see, insurance just pays the doctor when you screw up. Insurance doesn't protect you from disease. It just offers you up on a plate to the doctor. Oof. Well, how does that happen? How could that happen? Well, it happens because doctors wear the same white coat, the same trousers, the same pantyhose, the same shoes, room to room to room, dragging pee, poop, blood, pus, snot, slime, bacteria, virus, fungus, and yeast from room to room to room. Now, how can I say that? If I say something as outrageous as it is, you know I can always back it up. Because I spend so much time in federal court attacking the FDA, they would love to get me, so I'm always very careful, right? Yes. Okay. Well, that was March of 1998. In August of 2012, 17 years earlier, they identified one bacteria called C. diff, Clostridium difficile. It's only found in human poop. It's a human poop bacteria. Of those 90,000 people who are killed each year in hospitals, 1/3 of them, 30%, 30,000, are killed by this one bug, human poop bug. Now, what would happen if Iran or North Korea were to send over an intercontinental ballistic missile with a biological weapon in it? Hit the big population centers like LA, Chicago, Dallas, New York, Newark, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Miami. And they'd infect 2 million in these high population centers and kill 90,000. Would we send those people a Christmas card? Would we send those people chocolate to win their hearts and minds? No. Even the most ardent anti-war protester would fight you to be the one to push the button to vaporize those people because they just killed their grandma. And yet everybody wants to go to their doctor because insurance pays. Now, to show you how bad this is, in 1993, there were 85,750 of these infections from C. diff, Clostridium difficile, human poop bacteria. 17 years later, in 2010, it went up 400% to 346,800. What does that tell you? It tells you the doctors don't give a rat's tail. They don't care. There's no consequences. It went up 400%. Why should they wash your hands? There's no consequences if they don't. You know, Frank, I killed 7 people today. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're all in the same boat. Just have another martini and relax. See you on the green. See, now, if they were doing something to stop all this, the chart should look like that, shouldn't it? But it looks like this. What was the date on this? Again, this is August 2012. This is not 100 years ago. It got so bad. In 2013, it was a big article in the Wall Street Journal. It's never too awkward to ask. Have you washed your hands, Doc? Back off! You dirty pig. Get out of here. I didn't see you wash your hands. If you ever have to go to a doctor's office, carry a water gun full of urine. He comes in without washing his hands, just spray him. See how it feels, pig. That'll turn him around a little bit, wouldn't it? Now, here's one of my favorites. This, I go to Canada a lot. They get free medical care. Why do they invite me to Canada? Because just because it's free doesn't mean it's good. Narita McNeil was the kind of, on record, most people didn't know what she looked like, but on record, she was kind of like the Dolly Parton. She was a country western singer, very, very well loved and famous. Her voice was just, everybody loved her, right? And she went into the Cape Breton district hospital where she lived. It's an island province, 1,000 miles east of New York. When it's noon in New York, it's 1 o'clock there. I didn't even know it, but they have a separate time zone called the Atlantic time zone. Never heard of it. It's noon in New York. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon there. So I go there 4 times a year now. I get 5,000 people at my meetings in Cape Breton. They're getting free medical care. Why do they come to see me? Because they're tired of being killed. So at any rate, this is April 2013. She goes in for some unnamed surgery, whether it was breast reduction or prolapse uterus. They didn't say what it was, back surgery, knee surgery. It didn't say. She went in for some surgery, and 3 days later she was dead from an infection with C. diff, C. difficile. Now, the hospital, the government hospital in Cape Breton, death rate, the mortality rate, was 37% above the national average. Why on earth would you go to that hospital? Because she didn't ask the Better Business Bureau. Well, tell me about them. This is a volunteer, this is an elective surgery. It's not something I had to do because I got hit by a car and I'm bleeding all over the place. It's an elective surgery. She chose poorly, didn't she? She went there and they killed her. One of the most famous women in Canada, they killed her because some doctor didn't wash his hands after he pooped. Yum, yum. The Canadians save me all this stuff, and they give me these slides when I go there, right, so I can show it to the rest of the people. Crazy. Now, the Chinese have figured out how to solve the problem. I love the Chinese. I'm married to a Chinese. I love her. I love the Chinese. They've been around thousands and thousands of years before we even thought of, right? So here's how they have solved the problem. Now, I'm not promoting this. But the Chinese are very practical after thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Let's say a farmer goes in because he hurt his back lifting a big bale of hay or something like that. He goes into a Western hospital instead of a traditional Chinese medical guy who's going to give him acupuncture and some herbs, right? No traditional Chinese medical doctor kills anybody. They love them, right? Remember, they have 1.5 billion people. We have 300 million. They have 5 times the people we have. It costs 50 cents a month to treat each of their people. No deaths, no infections. Costs 50 cents. They've been doing it for thousands of years. 50 cents a month. Costs you $1,800 a month for insurance. Costs them 50 cents a month. Hello? So at any rate, let's say this farmer goes in and he gets his back operated on. He gets the infection, dies 3 days later, or the doctor plunges his knife too deep, goes through his disc and hits his artery, bleeds to death, and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's all kinds of reasons why people die when they go in for surgery. He dies. Well, when all this guy's sons and brothers hear this out in the farms, they come into that hospital with their picks and axes and shovels and rakes, and they beat that doctor to death with all those sharp instruments and tools. Each year in China, in the Western-type medical hospital setting, it's 27.3 doctors are killed by family relatives of people they've killed. So 40% of the doctors in the last year have quit and gone back to farming because it's safer than being a doctor at Western Hospital. Now, you got to give the Chinese credit. Now, I'm not advocating this, but I'm going to show you how to stop the problem. This will wind you up in jail. It won't really solve the problem. Because a few doctors that still practice will still practice the same way, right? So I'm going to show you how to solve the problem. I'm going to show you a few more of these, and then we'll get to the solutions. This came out in 2006. This is an annual figure. This isn't 100 years of collected information. This is a yearly figure. Deaths by medication are rising. Now, they're not talking about the side effects of the drug here. They're talking about decimal point problems where the doctor prescribed it wrong, gave the dose incorrect, or the pharmacist fulfilled it incorrectly. So here's a 3-year-old kid got a strep throat. The doctor writes a true prescription for penicillin for the strep throat, and the pharmacist is distracted for some reason and fills the kid's bottle, puts the label on correctly, but fills the kid's bottle with chemotherapy tablets for a 300-pound guy. Kills a kid. Well, just tough luck. Pharmacist doesn't go to jail, doesn't have his license suspended for 3 seconds. It's just one of those bad breaks. That little god up there on Mars just looked unkindly on you because you didn't burn enough goats or something. Well, these types of mistakes and errors in the United States each year amount to 1.5 million fatalities and permanent injuries in America. 1.5 million fatalities and permanent injuries in America. Why on earth would you want drugs? Because they're free. Insurance pays. I have to pay a $2 copayment. Bam! You're dead. Here's another one for the seniors. This came out in 2010. Hospital care failed for some patients. Well, that's kind of an L. People go to the hospital and die. Results of Medicare alarming. Now it's beginning to be alarming. The study was actually done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, which is essentially the auditor for Medicare. There's a monthly figure, and what he said was every month in America, medical doctors kill 15,000 Medicare patients over the age of 65 who go in for minor medical procedures and screening tests. Kill 5,000 of them. Now, how many would fly commercial airlines if you're over age 65 and you knew they killed 180,000 seniors every year? You wouldn't fly over age 65. See, you're out of your mind. We're going Greyhound. Or Amtrak. So here's 3 very famous people that doctors killed over the age of 65 in the last 3 years. Andy Rooney. 60 Minutes. You know, the guy that gave these really cute stories at the end? I loved watching him. He retired in October of 2011 at age 92. His wife was 87. They're going to go on a world cruise. And she says, you know, Andy, I'm a little nervous. I'm 87 years old. You're 92. The odds are in the next year, one of us is going to get sick. We're going on this world cruise for a year. We're going to places we don't even speak the languages. We should get a disc of our medical records. He said, yeah, that's probably a good idea. So they go into the doctor, and while the office staff is burning their disc for their records, the doctor is flipping through his file and says, you know, Andy, you're 92 years old here. And I don't see where we've ever done a colonoscopic exam on you. You could have cancer lurking around in you. And knowing Andy, he should have said, you know, I don't have any blood in my stool. I haven't lost any weight. And my bowel habits haven't changed in the last 2 years. I'm going to wait for anything you want to do to me until after the year goes by. But instead of saying, no, he said, oh, okay. He goes in the next day. The doctor puts the garden hose up his rump, punctures his intestine. He dies in 3 days from peritonitis, a belly infection. She's an instant widow. He never went on his cruise. Doctor goes and plays golf and has a martini. And if you look up his obituary, look it up on the internet, Andy Rooney's obituary, and he died in November 2011. It says, Mr. Rooney died from complications of a minor medical procedure. Wasn't minor for him, it killed him. Now, another one of my favorites is Dick Clark from American Bandstand. 82 years old, goes in for his annual physical, tells his GP he's getting up 5 times a night to take a pee. He said, well, you know, you might have diabetes. He tests him now. He said, the odds are you have an enlarged prostate. When I'm done with you here, I'm going to send you down to the hall urologist, and he'll examine. Sure enough, the urologist examines, yeah, you got an enlarged prostate. We're going to do surgery on you, give you some drugs, and we'll eliminate that inconvenience of getting up 5 times a night to take a pee. And he should have said, no! And so he said, oh, okay. Because the doctor convinced him, this is like clipping your fingernails. We do, it's an outpatient thing. You don't even have to stay a night in the hospital. You come in, we get it done. You come in at 9 o'clock, it's done by 9:30, 1 o'clock you're on the golf course. Really? Yeah, this is nothing. Oh, okay. Instead of no. Comes in, 9 o'clock, 9:30 is dead. Why? Because when you cut on the prostate gland, it releases all kinds of chemicals, including prostaglandins, which increase your risk of thrombotic stroke, coronary thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and he won the lottery. He got all 3. Died a half hour into the procedure.
Whoa.
Nothing wrong with him. Nothing. But my favorite is this one. This is my all-time favorite. Neil Young, our top astronaut, first man to walk on the moon, personally saved 2 doomed NASA missions. One, he was on the ground, and the ship was going crazy, and he was able with a computer. I mean, you have more apps on your cell phone than they had those computers in those days. And he was able to save that ship and save the crew. And then one time he was on the ship and was going crazy. They couldn't control it from the ground. So he was able to, with his knowledge of computers, to be able to save the ship and the crew, including himself. So he goes in for his 82nd birthday, his physical, in a private hospital in New York. And they say, boy, Neil, that NASA program must be really something. You're 82 years old, you got the body of a 50-year-old. All your blood chemistry is perfectly normal. The only thing we can find on you is one coronary artery has a 3 millimeter wide, 30% blockage way down at the tip. Not something that's going to be a high risk for thrombotic coronary, that's going to cause a heart attack and death. Not in the right location to cause you an angina. If it was higher up in the artery, it might cause angina. But way down there at the tip, it's not going to cause angina. And, you're 8 years old, 5, 6, 8, 10 years from now. It's a progressive thing. You get worse and fill up that artery, and you could die on the way to the hospital from a heart attack. Why don't you let us do a bypass and put a stent in there? And he should have said, no! But instead he said, yes, sir, let's do it. Goes in the next morning, put him in the head of the line. 3 days later, he's dead. What's he dead from? Complications of an elective cardiovascular procedure. And it was elective, meaning didn't need to do it. I mean, we had people, I have billionaires, who don't want those surgeries. They come to me. They have 98.5% blockage. In a couple of months' time, they're 100% open by angiograms, by actual retests of an angiogram, because the doctors don't want to believe it. These guys call me 3 or 4 times a day. I had one coming down here. My wife is a witness. He called me. Okay? This happens all the time. Okay, let's talk about obesity. The only thing we can brag about, being number 1 in the world, is we're the most obese nation in the world. We're number 1! Yahoo! What does that tell you about the medical theory and the government theory, what causes obesity? I mean, they've been telling us the same thing for 75 to 100 years. You eat too much, you don't exercise enough. You eat too much, you don't exercise enough. You eat too much, you don't exercise enough. Now we're the fattest nation in the world following their advice. What does it tell you about that advice? Remember Einstein? He said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Hello? It's time to back off and say, Doc, I don't believe you anymore. I've given you 75 years. My family's given you 75 years. We're all overweight. We're all obese. And so we're going to try something else. But instead, insurance pays. Okay, send me to the bariatric surgery. We'll do a gastric bypass. You'll put me on this drug and this drug and this drug. Bam, you're dead! Because it didn't solve the basic problem. So what is the basic cause? I'm going to tell you what the basic... I don't care what they want to know, but you know now, and you can save yourself and the people you love. "70% of our kids, according to experts, under the age of 12 are overweight 40% of our kids under the age of 12 are obese, 30 pounds more of their ideal weight for their height. Has nothing to do with eating too much or lack of exercise. Nothing! That's all they talk. Oh, get thin for early in January. Eat less calories. You can only do that for so long that you start eating again, the weight comes back because you haven't dealt with the basic problem. I actually have a book called Hell's Kitchen which goes into that. I think I have a picture of it in here. But here's one of the things we've already talked about. This kid's not going to make it to 25. He's already obese. He's not even 2 years old. He's already obese. Now, these French fries are a straw man. They have nothing to do with obesity. Nothing. Now, if that kid lives to be 50, these things will be the cause of obstructive artery disease in his heart and his brain and his kidneys. But have nothing to do... Oh, thank you. Have nothing to do with being obese. Here's your first clue. I'm going to give you 3 clues and I'm going to tell you what to do about it. Here's the first clue. This little girl here, Natalie Hayhurst from Terre Haute, Indiana, was famous. I mean, she was on Good Morning America back in 2011 because she was famous for eating light bulbs. That was her favorite snack, light bulbs. I mean, she'd unscrew them from the lamps and she'd just crunch light bulbs. Thank God there's no calories in them. Her favorite food, her favorites, she preferred wood, paper products, cardboard, sticks. She loved to eat rocks and dirt. She ate Diet Coke cans, not classic Coke cans, Diet Coke cans. She ate the magnets out of shower curtains, and she loved to eat plastic bottles and toys. That's probably why they took toys out of the Happy Meal, because of Natalie. So I called her parents, because there's only so many Hayhursts in Terre Haute, Indiana. I actually true story, I tracked them down. I said, I know the cause of her doing this, and I can help you. And she said, and the mother said, we're going to be on Good Morning America next week, and I'm not touching anything. Sorry, goodbye. Fame was more important than saving that kid. Well, this kid, and you kind of said it, this kid has the same problem that a pregnant woman has. Now, she's only 3 years old. The odds of her being pregnant are really low. I don't need to examine her. Although there's so many pedophiles who become pediatricians, they'd want to examine her, right, to prove that she wasn't pregnant. All right? I mean, what a perfect place for a pedophile. Become a pediatrician. What about a serial killer? What would be the best job in your life as a serial killer? A hospice. Everybody goes there to die. So you kill them an hour before they die. You get your jollies off because you got to kill them. Nurse Betty. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So, she has the same disease, pica, that a pregnant woman has. But she's not pregnant. So what is it that she has that they have? Well, the embryo steals nutrients from the mother faster than she's taking them in. And so she develops all these cravings and binge eating and weird eating. I mean, who eats pickles and ice cream? They're legendary. Who eats dog poop or Tootsie Rolls out of the kitty litter box? Pregnant women eat weird stuff. I was in Brazil in August of this year, and they have mostly Portuguese papers and magazines and everything, but they also have a few English ones. And while I was there, this story in English was in a Portuguese or a Brazilian newspaper. Okay, this lady here, 28 years old, during her pregnancy would eat 20 bath sponges a day, and even funnier, she ate 20 bath sponges every day that people take baths with, but also she ate the sand containing parrot poop from the bottom of her parrot's cage every day. Well, there's a yummy thought. I mean, this article, if I were writing the article, I'd have said, poop, poop, be doop. Would have been the title, right? And doctors send them psychiatrists. They say, just steel yourself and stop eating that nasty stuff. Now here's your final clue. Anybody here ever work with horses? Okay, what do you call it when a horse chews on a fence? It's what a baby stays in. Yeah, it's cribbing. Yeah, in horses it's called cribbing. And I was there on, just south of Fort Wayne, Indiana, a couple of years ago to see some kids with muscular dystrophy, which I tell you some great stories about that. And the baby buggies, or not the baby buggies, but the horse and buggies were late. And being a veterinarian as well as a physician, this was a horse and buggy Amish farm, so I go into the barn. And I didn't even need to look at the horse or do any tests on the horse. I could tell by the cribbing on this rail inside the stall in that barn that the horse living in that stall was severely minerally deficient. Now, it's socially unacceptable for you to eat your neighbor's furniture when you go visit them. So they developed the custom, when somebody comes over, particularly with little kids who would kind of chew on the legs of grandma's chair, here, have a cookie. So they wouldn't nibble on the chair. That's why they came up with the custom of giving people something to eat when you come to visit them. Cribbing in animals is munchies in people. When I bought my first clinic after graduating naturopathic medical school in Portland, Oregon, I bought a clinic. It was a weight loss clinic. It was a 30-year-old weight loss clinic, belonged to a DO. And, I mean, this was a flourishing... I mean, I looked at... They wouldn't show me the charts, but they did show me the tax returns. I mean, this guy was making more money than God. I mean, this guy was, like, crazy making money. So I said, okay, I'll buy the practice for what you're asking. And then he showed me all the charts when I signed all the papers and gave him his first payment. And I noticed that every month he's fulfilling the same prescription to the same person for thyroid, giving the same person the same drugs for appetite suppressant, writing prescriptions for them to go to the same gyms and everything, get it taken off, you know, insurance would pay for it and all that kind of stuff. But there's people who've been coming back there for 14, 20 years. They'd lose 3 pounds, they gain 5, and they'd lose 5 and gain 3, and, you know, their weight kind of stayed the same for 20 years, never really happening. But looking at the charts, it reminded me of horses that were cribbing. So I took 10 of the worst patients that had been coming to this guy for 20 years and never really lost any weight. And I gave them a mineral program, and in 3 days' time, they started losing 2 pounds a day. And in 3 months' time, they lost 140 pounds each. That was in 1978. So I've helped millions of people lose weight. The myth about exercise. This is actually done in Loyola Medical School in Chicago. It was published in January of 2009. This is August of 2009. Cover article in Time magazine. The myth about exercise, it won't make you lose weight. If all you do is exercise, you keep eating the same way, you'll actually gain weight. Why? Because when you exercise, you sweat. And sweat is not just water. Sweat is a soup of all the nutrients floating around. So here you are, somebody who loves you, your doctor tells you, you'll be drinking plenty of water when you're working out. And so you're sweating out this soup, say 65 nutrients in it. You're replacing it with water. What's happened to your nutritional reserves? Going down. It reaches a certain point where you're going to eat the bedpost. You're going to eat the rugs. You're going to eat the ashes out of the fireplace. You'll eat the caulking. You'll take a screwdriver and take the caulking off the wall. You'll eat drywall. You eat really weird, or the Tootsie Rolls out of the kitty litter box. Yum, yum. So again, Hell's Kitchen, the book. This was actually started as a sermon that I gave in the church that I go to in San Diego. We actually made a CD first called Hell's Kitchen. And I asked the pastor, I said, well, Pastor, since this was professionally recorded in your church, I have to ask you for permission to use the title I want to use for this. Because a kitchen can be a bad place or good place depending on what you're doing there. I want to call it Hell's Kitchen. He kind of got red a little bit and stroked his chin, thought for a minute. He said, well, hell yeah. Great pastor. Because he knew exactly what I was saying. A kitchen can be a place of hell. You can kill everybody in your family in the kitchen. You just fry everything you're giving them, clog their arteries, give them MS, give them Alzheimer's disease, pour salad dressing all over everything. There's a lovely thought. But it's healthy. Doctors say it's healthy. We better ask your doctor again. He's 56 and a half years old. The subtitle here, Hell's Kitchen, the cause, prevention, and cure of obesity. Nobody else knows this except you and me now. Unless you've read the book. And then you throw in ASAP. Take the Healthy Start Pack, the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for your body weight. You're getting those minerals, which stop the cravings. And then to accelerate the weight loss, instead of a half a pound a week, you want a half a pound a day or 2 pounds a day. You take a dropper full of this ASAP under your tongue. Within 2 or 3 days, you start losing a half a pound to 2 pounds a day. I get hundreds and hundreds of people every month who lose 2 pounds a day. It's not unusual for somebody who needs to lose 200 pounds to lose 140 pounds in 90 days. Very healthily because they're getting all the essential nutrients. As long as they stay on those 90 essential nutrients for their body weight, they will never gain the weight back. The weight will never come back because the basic root cause of being overweight is being minerally deficient. in this book I have coming out, this is a big story in there. Now, how many of you have heard that exercise is good for you? No, whether you believe it or not. How many of you have heard it's good for you? If you don't raise your hand, you're a lying commie. Okay? Because you've all heard it. I know you've all heard it. Jim Fixx, during the 60s, he was the darling of the medical profession. 6'4", weighed 165 pounds. These are actually a picture of his legs. He taught, I think he taught economics in either Yale or Harvard, one of the Ivy League schools out there in New England. And his thing was running. He said, look, don't waste your time on vitamins and minerals. If you look in the index of the book here under vitamins and minerals, it says go to page 165. You go to page 165, and it says don't waste your time taking vitamins and minerals. Just exercise, walk around the block 10 times, and you'll keep your arteries clean, and you'll live longer. You won't waste your money on vitamins and minerals. Well, at age 52, while he was running and preparing for a marathon, he drops dead of a cardiomyopathy heart attack while he was running at age 52. The theory didn't work for him, did it? Now, cardiomyopathy heart attack is due to a deficiency of a single mineral. When Dr. Milan and I did those 1,700 autopsies, 1,700 autopsies of these kids in China, they all died of a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a deficiency of a single mineral. Well, Jim Fixx's protege, his top student, was a Canadian by the name of Brian Maxwell. And Brian Maxwell ran 100 marathons. Never came in less than fifth. I mean, that is awesome. 100 marathons, never came in less than fifth. You got to be kidding me. He had 114 gold medals. 3 were in the Olympics. The other 11 were divided between the triathlon, the World Games, Ironman competition. This guy was probably the most fit guy in modern times, right? Other than Hercules and people like that. And his wife was a nutritionist and dietitian. They came up with a concept of carving up the night before a big event. So you have plenty of glycogen, animal starch in your liver, your muscles, that kind of stuff. They came up with that concept. This guy was no novice when it came to exercise and the physiology of exercise and kind of stuff. Also, he and his wife came up with the first Power Bar. How many have heard of the Power Bar? Power Bar was the first granola bar packaged and sold commercially. It was so successful, he had his picture on the label. Nestle paid him and his wife $300 million for the rights to that granola bar. And they could have come up with their own granola bar, but they wanted his because he was such a famous athlete. They gave him $300 million for it. Then 3 months later, he dies of a cardiomyopathy heart attack while he's running at age 51. Now, Jim Fixx died at 52. He beat his mentor by 1 year. I love this title here. It says, Heart Attack Claims Another Fitness Guru. This obituary is in March of 2004. I was actually up in Canada. This occurred, so this is where I got this article. Probably didn't even show up down here. It's a big story because he's a Canadian. Heart attack claims another fitness guru. Well, today he's not a guru. He's just goo. And I'm a pathologist, and a lot of times when people get to you, they're just goo.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Now, in America, you hear of sudden heart death in athletes all the time. Kids, and we were talking about athletes of every sport, people who are cheerleaders and kids under 18 years old. I mean, they're dropping like flies, 10, 12, 16, 20 years old, while they're playing. They're just dropping dead. These are kids who are fit. I mean, they've been training for years. They just drop dead. Sometimes they'll finish their workout, take a shower, go home, and drop dead at home. Somebody needs to go to jail here. Because our paper, Dr. Milan's and my paper, came out in 1990 on 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 who died of this disease. And not one doctor, not one pediatrician, not one sports medicine doctor has heeded our work. It's published in an international chemistry and medical journal. Published in Chinese and English. This is not like it was a hidden thing in Dell's comic books. 3 big universities were involved. It was published. And our kids are still dying because nobody has implemented what we said to do. Now in China, by implementing what we suggested, they went from 13 kids dying per 1,000 every year of this disease, 13 per 1,000, down to 1 per 1,000. That's huge. We do the same thing here. And all they had to do was take a good multiple vitamin, and they had this one mineral, selenium, and it stopped all those sudden heart deaths, just like you flipped off a switch. But our guys are smarter than that. They just say, don't waste your time on Wallach's information. Just drink plenty of water. And you'll be dead tomorrow. I mean, I didn't mean to say that. But drink plenty of water. Now, Jim Fixx died in September of 1982. And he was the darling of the medical profession. I mean, they loved this guy. Because he was saying, exercise, don't take vitamins and minerals. I mean, he was the medical system's ally. Well, in December of 1982, the Journal of the American Medical Association did kind of a literature search on sudden heart death. And they said, after reviewing everything, they came out, their little article came out in Runner's World 3 months later, in December of 1982, 3 months after Jim Fixx died, in September of 1982, December 1982. The title was The Exercise Heart Attack Paradox. Now, a paradox is something where the outcome is different than the theory. Now, exercise is supposed to be healthy for your heart. But what they found out was, now remember, this is from the Journal of the American Medical Association, the editors, the sports editors in there, said, while running, a man's risk of heart attack death increases by a factor of 700%. So, gentlemen, if your wife keeps asking you to go take walks and exercise, and she's taking out insurance on you, it means she has a boyfriend. Here's another one that disturbs me. Each year in America, non-contact injuries to kids. In other words, they're just running down the field and they crumple because they tear a ligament, they tear a cartilage, or a hamstring or something like that. It's not an impact thing. This is just a one-man accident, right? They're just running down the field, cutting here and there, and they tear something. We're talking about 1.35, 1,350,000 per year in America between the ages of 6 and 19. Somebody needs to go to jail here. Where's all these sports medicine doctors? Where's these personal trainers? Where's the coaches? Where's everybody who's supposed to be taking care of these kids? They're giving them Gatorade. Well, Gatorade has 2 nutrients in it. Our sports drink, called Rebound, has 100. Let's see. If you're sweating out 65, 70 nutrients, how much good is 2 going to do you? What about 6? Powerade has 6. Gatorade has 2. Our Rebound, thank you, sir. And we have it in cans, we have it in these canisters, we have it in sticks. Tear them open, put them in a glass of water, or a bottle of water. This has 100 nutrients in it. It was designed for professional sports. We actually have many professional sports teams, basketball, football, hockey teams use this stuff. These are the sticks. They come 30 in a box, thank you, sir. And, you know, this is good when you're doing whole big canisters for teams and things. Just throw it in there. It's just really cool. It has selenium in it. Nobody's going to die of a sudden heart death when they take Rebound. Are you getting a picture here? We built these things to take care of your kids, your grandkids. Don't let your kids and grandkids die unnecessarily because the sports medicine doctor and the personal trainers and the coaches have failed you. But they're the professionals. That doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. They've proven that. Each year in America, almost 400,000 kids in football, almost 400,000 kids in basketball, 172,000 in soccer, 119,000 in baseball, softball is 58,000, volleyball is 43,000, wrestling is 40,000. That was my sport. Cheerleading, 37,000, almost 38,000. Gymnastics is only 28,000, and track and field is 24,000, almost 25,000. You're just running down the track, boom, your hamstring goes. Because you don't have enough raw material to maintain it. Kind of like driving a car, a NASCAR, 200 miles an hour without any oil in it. You could expect something catastrophic is going to happen before the 500 miles is up. Are you getting a picture here? I think you are, because you're very quiet. That means you see what's going on here. So, let's look at professional athletes. I mean, we pay them millions of dollars in an event. We're talking about the top guys. They get $2, $3 million, $5 million an event. They only play for like 3 months. The rest of the year, they're home smoking cigars, having a grand old time, traveling around the world. So, why do we have problems like this? Because they're drinking Gatorade with 2 nutrients, Powerade with 6, water with none. If you have somebody in your home who's in the Pee Wee League, Pop Warner League, who just exercise because they want to stay fit because their doctor told them to and they think it's good, you better be giving them Rebound, get them on the 90 essential nutrients, and then you won't lose them. They won't become disabled. They won't get in trouble physically. But you have to be obsessive about this. Ask my wife, I'm crazy obsessive about this. Our whole kitchen is all my bottles of stuff every day. I take my liquids twice a day. I take 75 tablets, pills, and capsules twice a day. I don't expect everybody to do that. But I can't get sick. I'm going on 75 years old. I haven't been sick in 66 years. I have never been on a prescription medication. You can't find a 75-year-old who's never been on a prescription medication. You and me, babe. Even as a kid?
You've never taken a prescription?
Even as a kid, you never had any penicillin or anything?
No.
Okay, good girl. How old are you now? Come on, for science. Not going to give. Okay. 39. There you go. Now, listen, she...
Older than you,
Well, she's not, what's the guy's name? Jack Benny? She's not Jack Benny. Come on, 39 years old. Okay. At any rate, these guys drink water, Gatorade, Powerade. They're running down the court and they just fall apart. This isn't from an impact with another player. Okay, look at this guy's got, he's got all these bandages and ace bandages, all this stuff all over his legs. These guy's a mess. When you look at the average lifespan of professional athletes, depending on, the average lifespan when you take all professional sports combined is 62. Now these guys are paid to exercise. These guys are paid to be healthful. These guys are paid to exercise. They're paid to eat right, to supplement right, sleep right, do everything right, stay away from the bad stuff. And you think if anybody could live to be 100 to be professional athletes, they're getting paid to do everything perfect. Average lifespan is 62. Except for football players, their average lifespan is 51.
Yeah, 50. I was going to say
51, yeah. There's a big study. It was done in 2011 when they were looking at changing blocking and tackling rules and changing how helmets were made for head and neck injuries, neck concussions, all that kind of stuff. Totally unnecessary. Here's the one. There's a Canadian newspaper, and they were doing a study with Canadian football players and the U.S. NFL players. And to make a long story short, the sports medicine doctors were shocked when they were collecting the information for the study. They said, well, we can't believe this. These guys are, average lifespan is 55 years of age. It doesn't even make 62 like when you're the total of athletes. And so the insurance companies went crazy. They said, wait a minute. We're losing money on these guys big time when it comes to life insurance. So they got their actuaries, their numbers crunchers to look at this, and the actuaries said, that's not a correct number. 55 is not a correct number. The average lifespan of professional football players is 51. So they had to triple their life insurance premiums. So instead of $300 a month, it was $900 a month. Of course, if you're making $1 million a game, it doesn't matter, right? So here's Theo Ratliff. He's been with us for 14 years. When he was 28 years old, he had bone-to-bone arthritis in both knees. Cartilage popped off his right hip, had to be surgically reimplanted. It was kind of barely hanging on. They surgically replanted on. He caught a pass during a regulation game, broke his wrist, and the orthopedic surgeons for the Atlanta Hawks said, look, this guy's too fragile to play professional basketball. We're not going to sign off on him, so they killed his contract. He was actually in his locker, clearing out his locker, and you heard one of our guys, Mike Glenn, who had been a player, this guy was an all-star. His nickname was the Stinger. A lot of his jump shot records still are in play. And he was talking to another player about this, and so Theo said, well, that stuff helped my joints? He said, yeah, even yours, Theo. So he got in contact, and I put him on. This guy is 6'11", and he looks skinny, but he's 6'11", so he weighs 300 pounds. So he had to take 3 of the healthy bone and joint packs per month. And we invented the Rebound for him. 90 days later, we had completely rebuilt him. He passed all his physicals, and he played for 14 more years, and made $140 million he was not going to make if he listened to the orthopedic surgeons. Now, do you think his wife, Christina, loves me? She loves me. She loves me. She's 6 foot tall. No, actually, she's 6'5". And so every time I go there, she makes me a 3-inch thick T-bone steak, because she knows I love steaks. Remember, she gets the top chef in Atlanta to fix it for me. And she just stands there while I'm eating and pats me on the head, and she just loves me. U.S. News World Report, February 2005, special health issue. Rated America's most credible print news source. Special health, who needs doctors? Your future physician might not be a medical doctor. You may be better off. I guarantee that every medical doctor in America canceled their subscription to U.S. News World Report. Every hospital, every clinic, every pharmacy, everybody who dealt with doctors canceled that. At least it wasn't going to be out there in the waiting room. Now, why did they do that? Well, this was an apology to the American public. This whole issue was an apology to the medical public. Because during the 1990s, some of you are old enough to remember the battle between doctors and the HMOs. I'm the doctor. I'm the one that's supposed to determine what drugs you get, what treatment you get, whether you get surgery or not for your illness. Do you want an accountant from an HMO determining what you're going to get? And your answer should have been, yep. Because the accountant, the only way the HMO was going to make a profit was to cure you in 3 weeks. Then he'd take your $100 every month for the rest of your life. But everybody went with the doctors, including them. And once they realized, they looked at everything I just showed you earlier, they said, uh-oh, we bet on the wrong horse. And so this was their apology to the general public. Remember I told you that my survey of 200 obituaries in I don't know, about a 5-year period, all from the Journal of the American Medical Association, was 58. Well, doctors didn't like that, so they ran their own. They said, well, Wallach lied. The average general practitioner, family practitioner, and primary care physician doesn't die at 58 like he says. We die at 56. They were so eager to show that my results were imperfect that they didn't care. They showed that they died 2 years earlier than I said. So I always do apologize for giving them too many years. Yeah, this was published in 1999 in every medical journal in America. I don't know about the rest of the world, but in America this appeared in 1999. Okay. Now this is beautiful. This came out December 17th, 2013. This was a big hoo-ha. I've been doing radio for 20 years. Up until about 4 years ago, I had 130 stations. Well, 4 years ago, I got involved with Genesis Communications Network, GCN. Now I deal with 1,300 stations, 2 hours a day. And so this message is going out. And when I read this story, that this was based on a letter to the editor by 3 doctors who looked at a couple of articles on studies that were paid for by Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. They said, vitamins are a waste. Multivitamins are useless. Well, when you look up the original study, the multivitamins only had 3 vitamins. Didn't have the 90 essential nutrients, didn't have 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential vitamins. They had 3 vitamins. And then they said, in doctors over the age of 65, it didn't help them with dementia. Well, I don't think anything can help a doctor with dementia. Because I guarantee they're all taking statin drugs. Dementia is a physician-caused disease. I'll get into that in a minute. Dementia is a physician-caused disease. Everybody with Alzheimer's disease, everybody with vascular dementia, everybody with Korsakoff syndrome and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome was caused by a doctor. And I'll prove that to you in a second. I'll be happy to go into a federal court and guess who will prevail. Okay? So this is the kind of crap that goes on. Now, why is this happening? Well, if you look at what's going on in the stock market, all these big pharmaceutical companies are buying up vitamin mineral companies like crazy. They're just buying them up like crazy. Because why would they want you to cure yourself with vitamins and minerals? Because you'll stop using pharmaceuticals. So they're buying up all these companies, and they would, if I were to sell my company to them, which I'm not going to do, of course, but if I were to do that, they would take, see, to prevent you from having congestive heart failure, or if you have congestive heart failure for 3 years, you've been on the heart transplant list, I'll get you off medication in 5 days. I won't take you off. Your own doctor will take you off. The quickest this happens is 5 days. Sometimes it takes 3 months, but usually 5 days to 3 months, you'll be off your medication for congestive heart failure because it's a deficiency of a single vitamin. It was discovered by a Japanese naval surgeon in the late 1700s. But why would a doctor want to cure you for $300 in office calls when he can get $750,000 for a heart transplant? There's no law requiring him to cure you when there's a cure available. Remember? There's a self-policing monopoly. And they've killed off all their competition, so nobody can offer you a cheaper, more effective, safer option. Are you beginning to get a picture here?
So what's the deficiency?
Thiamine deficiency is beriberi. Congestive heart failure is a simple vitamin B1 deficiency. So our program for congestive heart failure gives you 28,000 times the minimum daily requirement. 5 days time, you're off all your digitalis, your water pills. Your cardiologist and heart transplant surgeon will throw up their hands and take you off all of everything. Take your bracelet away from you that'll light up, when they have your heart. I do this all the time. People say, well, Wallach, you can't do that. It's genetic. Crapola. It's a simple vitamin deficiency. Cardiomyopathy heart disease is a simple mineral deficiency, a deficiency of selenium. Somebody needs to go to jail here. In any other industry, I mean, you think about it. Bernie Madoff defrauded his investors by $3 billion, and he went to jail for life. Doctors defraud you every year in America of $3 trillion, not $3 billion, $3 trillion, and you love your doctor, you send them Christmas cards. Because insurance pays. So, I'm going to show you here how to solve the problem. I don't want you to kill them. I want you to stop using them. This is one of my last favorites here on doctors, and we'll get into the diseases. I'm going to show you how to prevent and reverse them. Nutrition. Now remember, I haven't been to a doctor in 66 years of me being the patient. I've autopsied a few. They decompose like everybody else. I've never been on a prescription drug. I haven't been sick in 66 years. I don't have any ailments. I do not have any ailments. I don't have any problems. I have political problems, but not physical and physiological or disease problems. So, what if everybody in America were like me medically? The medical system would be real humble, wouldn't they? You go to your doctor only once every 75 years? 95% of all doctors would retire and go into some other industry. You understand what I'm saying? If you take care of yourself, you'll go to see your doctor once every 75 years and you won't need them. I'm glad there's a few physicians in here of various kinds because we're recruiting them. They're lining up to join me because they see the writing on the wall. I see 1 million patients an hour. While I'm here having fun with you guys, I'm seeing 1 million patients. Well, how am I doing that? Because I have 1 million PAs. How many PAs do you have? How many PAs do you have? I have 1 million PAs.
I'm kind of retired.
Okay, I have 1 million PAs. And each of them sees thousands of people a day. Because each of them has thousands of PAs. You understand what I'm saying? And I have cookie cutter recipes. They're all Betty Crocker recipes in these books. They're all Betty Crocker recipes. You just follow what the recipe says. The cake comes out the same every time. Start inventing your own stuff, I'd take your permit to work with me away. That make sense? Okay. New York Times. Now, my wife loved this guy. This guy was a cardiologist. He's a cardiologist. He was a top soccer player in Brazil. He was their Olympic star. This guy, he kicked all his goals backwards with his heel, so his nickname was Heel of Gold. He'd get in position, he would kick the goals backwards. So I don't know why he came up with that, but he kicked all his goals with his heel, so they called him the Heel of Gold. His nickname was Socrates. Nobody even knows his real name because all the soccer players in Brazil take on a persona nickname kind of thing. So his name was Socrates. So you knew he was probably a physician. He was a cardiologist. And he drops dead playing senior soccer at 57 years old of a heart attack. My wife said, "Oh, he's so handsome." Yes, honey, but he's dead. That's probably, he's too beautiful. He should have been a girl. He's so beautiful. Okay. My wife and I took 10 years to write this book, Immortality. Because there's 80 million baby boomers come along who all want to live to be 100. Anybody in here born between 1946 and 64? Okay, 3 or 4 of you. Okay, the rest of you are older than Solomon probably. Okay, Methuselah, I guess they say. But we spent 10 years collecting all the information from the National Geographic, the New England Centenarian Study, newspapers, anthropology departments at the university, the agriculture departments, and we settled on the top 20 longevity cultures that came out of the National Geographics, the top 20 longevity cultures. They have 25 common threads that allow them to be the longest lived people on Earth. Okay? They have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. They have 40 times 100-year-olds we do, according to the New England Centenarian study, which is by Harvard Medical School. They have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. They have 100-year-old per 250 of their population. We have 100-year-old per 10,000. They don't have any doctors. They're all illiterate. They're all from third world cultures, not a single first world culture in the top 20 longevity cultures. They have no insurance, government or private. They have no hospitals or clinics, no pharmacies or pharmaceuticals or pharmacists. Great-great-grandma, they have 5 generations living in the same household. Talk about conservation of assets, 1 mortgage instead of 5. Grandma is a doctor, with all her herbs and, her poultices and teas and all that kind of stuff. No need for daycare because there's great-great-grandma taking care of the kids and grandkids and great-great-grandkids. And no need for hospice because everybody dies at home with everybody loving them around them, sending them off to heaven. And then there's 20 other things that they do that are common. They're all in this book, Immortality. Everybody needs to read this book. If not for you, for somebody you love, your kids, your grandkids, your nieces and nephews, your brothers and sisters, everybody needs to read this book because this will add 25 to 50 healthier years to your life if you're obsessive. You can't just read it and say, man, that was cool, and not implement it. You got to implement it. I drive people crazy when they travel with me, okay? Because I'm obsessive about this stuff. I don't expect that everybody will do that. But my goal, how many of you know that story about Babe Ruth? When the Yankees were down by 3 runs, 9th inning, 2 outs and 2 strikes against Babe Ruth. How many of you know that story? Yeah, Babe Ruth stepped out of the box. Yep, he stepped out of the batter's box, hit his cleats. He points up to center field where the flagpole was, and everybody knew what he meant. Everybody knew what he meant, including the pitcher. He was going to hit a grand slam home run. And the pitcher was very stupid. Instead of just throwing the ball in the dirt and walking him, and he could take care of the other couple of guys, he tries to whiz it past Babe Ruth. Sure enough, boom, he hits a grand slam home run. The Yankees win by 1 run. So I'm playing Babe Ruth here, and I'm pointing out to center field. And I'm telling you, I'm going to live beyond 200. I'm going to live beyond 200. Now, that's not as outrageous as it sounds. Because I'm doing everything perfect from the standpoint of nutrition and avoidance of the bad stuff. Nobody's ever done that before. Now, I probably have, out of my 1 million physician's assistants, I probably have 25 that are doing the same thing obsessively as me. I have some of them. They're half my weight. These little old ladies that are like 90 years old. One of them's named Shar. She's from Michigan. She's been with me for 25 years. She weighs 95 pounds soaking wet. She's actually in this group's upline. Grand lady. She takes as much stuff as I do twice a day. She's 60 pounds lighter than me. She takes my dosage twice a day. Avoids all the bad stuff. She just turned 70 in April. If you were to look at her, you would think she's 40 years old. She has the physiology of a 20-year-old. She has the looks of a 40-year-old, and she chronologically is 70. Now, I have about 25 people like that who've been obsessive with me for 25 years doing exactly as I'm doing. So let's look at some of these other things that these people do. National Geographic, you got to trust them. They have no access to grind. Well, there's a story. This is one of the top 20 cultures. It's one of the top 20 cultures that outlive us. These are the ones that have, in the Western Hemisphere, they have more 100-year-olds than anybody else in the Western Hemisphere. These are the Nicoyans from the Nicoyan Peninsula on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica and Central America. They said, this little girl's going to live to be 120 because a lot of them do. It's very simple. They all do. I shouldn't say they all, but most of them do. These kids are just living like crazy now. Now, they have no doctors, no vaccinations, no insurance. They don't have anything that you would go there. This is the worst possible place to go on earth for medical care. There's none. Yet they have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. It's a front page story on National Geographic, May of 2013. This isn't May of 1913. This is 2013. Okay? Why are they saying that? Because the facts tell you this is going to be true. When you go there, and you look in the last 2 paragraphs of this 10-page article, because they wind through everything. And you look at the last 2 paragraphs, they say, This is a fact. These people do live this long. These kids will live to be 120 because they do it all the time. The only thing we can't tell is if it's genetic or dumb luck. It's absolutely dumb luck.
They spend $85 a year on health care in Costa Rica.
It's dumb luck. Even an American can get the same benefit. It's dumb luck. Because sometime thousands of years ago, when those people moved into that area, without knowing the analysis of the soil, they have all the known mineral nutrients necessary for long life in that soil. And they refurbish it every day. I'm going to show you how they do that. They actually mentioned it in here. They didn't even know they mentioned it, but they mentioned it. Let's look at billionaires first. We actually have a CD. We sent them a CD called What Kills Billionaires. They ran an art. I love it because it sells a lot of our CDs. What kills billionaires? Billionaires are killed by the same unglamorous things that kill everybody else. Heart attack, stroke, pulmonary embolism, diabetes, obesity, cancer, suicide. This came out in 2004. As of 2004, there's never been a billionaire who lived to be 100. The average lifespan was 78, and they didn't like that. So they asked Forbes magazine to rerun it, which they did 7 years later. 7 years later, Forbes magazine reran this study. And as of 2011, 7 years later, there's still not been a billionaire who lived to be 100. 2011, still not been a billionaire who lived to be 100. The average, or all the other sort of stuff that they looked at in 2004 were statistically the same except one. One was dramatically different. And that was the average lifespan. Instead of 78, like it was in 2004, the average lifespan in 2011 was 66. It dropped 12 years. Now, from a standpoint of statistics, that's impossible. If they were doing exactly the same thing, they're not going to drop 12 years in average lifespan in a 7-year period. They might drop 12 days or 12 hours. They might gain an hour or gain a month. And, it's kind of like this. It's not a straight line in biology. What happened? They knew that I knew there had to be something driving them. They had to be doing something that drove them to lose 12 years of average lifespan in a 7-year period. What happened? Well, I have a lot of billionaire friends. Because I get the ones that are terminal, inoperable. I save 95% of them. So they'll do a lot of what I ask them to do. Because I charge them nothing. They always say, okay, well, you have everything you want. And they think I'm going to ask for a house in the Caribbean or something. And they would give it to me. But they never speak to me again. So their long-term friendship is more important to me than a house in the Caribbean. So I always tell them, I only want one thing from you, we'll call it even. Okay, well, you can have it. I want you to fire your doctor. And they look at me and say, yeah, that's all I want from you. You fire your doctor. He's the one that said you were inoperable. He's the one that said you were terminal. And I saved you, and all I'm asking for is you to fire the doctor who is going to throw you under the bus. That makes sense. So they fire their doctors. I love it. So I asked them to find out what these guys did, what the billionaires did over time, over that 7-year period, proactively, because they knew they had to be doing something wrong. Bad wrong. They came back a week later and said, Wallach, that was very profound. You're exactly right. What these billionaires did was hire the top personal trainers, the top sports medicine doctors, and they spent over $500,000 in their home, their workplace, each in their home, their workplace, their yachts, and their vacation cabins up in the mountains, putting in fitness centers. Because their personal trainer said, the reason why you're dying so young? Because you don't exercise enough. Look at these third world country guys. They work out in the fields 10 hours a day. If you exercise 3 hours a day instead of nothing, you'll add 25 years to your life. So they were rowing. They were running on the treadmills. They had their stationary bike. They are just running like crazy. They said, drink plenty of water. So they all got Fiji water. The most expensive water you can buy. They all got Fiji water. And guess what? They just died by sweating out all their nutrients and drinking water. They sweat themselves to death. Well, now they're all drinking Rebound. Now here's a very, very smart guy. Steve Jobs, billionaire, very smart technology, very smart marketing. He died 10 years before the average billionaire. He died at 56. Why is that? Well, he was an unsupplemented vegan. He was a vegan who did not take vitamins and minerals. And he believed, because somebody told him and convinced him he could save 50 people each day by not eating cows, because a cow eats as much as 50 people. So if he didn't eat cows, he would save 50 people by not encouraging farmers to grow more cows. So there'd be more food for people. That was kind of his reasoning for being a vegan. But then on supplementing, he spent a lot of money for the top organic foods from all over the world to be shipped in by plane for him individually every day. He hired the top 5-star vegan chef to cook everything for him, which he did, and stir-fried everything, and salad dressings and everything, and extra, 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 virgin, 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 olive oil and coconut oil. Gave him pancreatic cancer, just like he shot him in the head. And then Steve Jobs made his second most terrible mistake. Instead of going to the Nicoyan Peninsula in Costa Rica in the Pacific coast of Central America, and was going and finding the oldest great-great-great-great-great-great-grandma, saying, "Grandma, give me what you eat. Give me the herbs you would take if you had bad cancer." He'd still be alive today. Instead, he paid millions of dollars to the top experimental cancer doctor to delay treating his other patients, spend his full time creating the ultimate panacea, kind of like the old days of the alchemist, to cure his cancer, and he killed Steve Jobs as sure as he shot him in the head. This guy was a top 5-star chef. What made him interesting was he only did organic foods. And he was hired by queens and kings and emperors all over the world to cook for them organic foods. And he died at 54 of a cardiomyopathy heart attack. Because you can have organic Brussels sprouts. Do they require selenium? No. They can grow in soil and look beautiful with no selenium in them. That at 54, the top vegetarian vegan chef in the world, age 54. Now, how many remember Art Linkletter? Anybody remember Art Linkletter?
Yeah.
Okay. In 1933, he ran into the book called Lost Horizon. A couple of years later, he saw the black and white movie Lost Horizon, which talked about the Huns of people who live in the Karakoram Mountains. Everybody thinks they live in the Himalayas, but they live in the Karakoram Mountains, which separate China from Pakistan, northern Pakistan. And there was also an obituary in the New York Times of a herbalist, acupuncturist, traditional Chinese medical doctor by the name of Li, L-I, Chung Yu. And the government of China testified that he was 256 years old. He thought he was younger than that, but the government said he was 256. And they had given him a certificate after he was 100 years old. When he was 150, they gave him a certificate. When he was 200 years old, they gave him a certificate. When he was 250, they gave him a certificate, and he died 6 years later. Everybody knew him and knew his face, and they said, "This is the guy." So, and my wife even said, she's from China, she said, "Oh, it's a myth. Can't be right." But if you read the book Rare Earths Been Cures, in that book it talks about rare earths. How many of you heard of rare earths? Okay, rare earths are used in electronics equipment, computer chips and cell phones, and 99% of all known sources, deposits of rare earths on Earth are in China. Now this guy grew up in Sichuan province, was born there, lived there, was an herbalist there, and died there with his 24th wife. He lived through 24 wives. And he had no two of them at the same time. One would die and he'd marry another one. Another one would die, and so on. Okay? And this guy lived in a place that's just rich with these rare earths. When you read this book, in chapter 11, it goes into all these rare earths. They double the lifespan of laboratory animals. Let's say you take a laboratory rat or mouse or something, you give them a Ralston Purina's nutrition, they'll live 6 years. If that's all you give them is those pellets, they'll live 6 years. You add these rare earths to them, they live 12 years. So maybe Li Chung Yu was real. Okay? So that's what I'm banking on. I'm pointing out there, and I'm taking my rare earths every day like crazy because I want to be the next Li Chung Yu. I believe I can do it. I have 25 people who are going there with me. Do you want to be there with me? The medical system will be real humble. I love that part. At any rate, he dies at 97, taking vitamins and minerals like crazy since he read that obituary, looked at the movies, read the book. He supplemented like crazy from the same sources they got their supplements from, which I'll show you in a minute. This is crazy. He lived to be 97 just supplementing. Doctors live to be 56 taking pharmaceuticals. Linus Pauling died at 93. And he began taking vitamins and minerals at age 18. His first degree, his Bachelor of Science, was in agricultural chemistry, which was my minor, was in agricultural chemistry. My major was in animal husbandry and nutrition. He went to the agricultural school at Oregon State in Eugene, got his first degree in agricultural chemistry. He won the Nobel Prize in 1954. And his Nobel Prize, most people think it was for vitamin C. He never got any award for vitamin C. It was just kind of one of his infatuations and hobby later in life, but he never got any award for it. In fact, he got a lot of flack from his peers and so forth, but he never got any award for vitamin C. His first Nobel Prize was for studying the nutrition of genes. Remember I told you earlier, the genes require all these cofactors and energy and substrate and all. They need raw materials. You could take, for instance, what he talked about, you could take the top Greek sculptor. This guy's 85 years old. I mean, this guy has made some of the most gorgeous sculptures any place. This guy's a master sculptor. You put him out in the middle of a cornfield in Nebraska, say, okay, master sculptor from Greece, I want a 72-ton, 20-foot statue of Zeus. I can do that. Okay, go on. And he'll kind of look around and he says, no, wait a minute. I need a 75-ton block of marble. I'm going to need some hammers and chisels and files. I'm going to need some pulleys and all kinds of stuff so I can raise myself up and all these kind of things. And I'm going to need a lot of food because I need a lot of energy at my age to do all this. And so this is what Linus Pauling learned about genes. No matter how perfect your genes are, they can't do nothing without raw materials, cofactors, and energy. And so he said in his acceptance speech for his first Nobel Prize, you can trace every sickness, every disease, and every ailment to a mineral deficiency. There's not a single genetically transmitted disease out there. Not a single one. What about Jack LaLanne? Anybody remember Jack LaLanne? Okay. When he was 12 years old, he wanted to be Mr. America and Mr. Universe and get those two titles. He accomplished both of those by the time he was 25. And he started his own vitamin mineral company. In fact, Joe Weider just died this year too. Earlier this year, Joe Weider, he had his own vitamin mineral. He died at 93. I haven't got his obituary yet. But Jack LaLanne, taking vitamins and minerals since he was 12, died at 96. Doctors die at 56, according to their own survey, taking all their pharmaceuticals. Now, I guarantee you, his vitamins and minerals at 96 were not like mine. Mine have all 90 appropriate for your body weight. His had 38. So even 38 is better than nothing. 38 is better than the 3 of those guys who wrote the letter to the editor and said vitamins are worthless. 38 is better than 3. Well, 90 is better than 38, especially at 28,000 times the minimum data requirement. Why would you take the minimum? Well, I'm only going to put 2 quarts of oil in my car. Even though the maintenance book says 6, I'm going to save a few bucks here. I'll just put in 2. People living under the bridge, dumpster diving behind McDonald's wouldn't do that. Now this guy was just a recent story. Died at 95. And he was on my program for the last 20 years. We have distributors in Atlanta, Georgia, including Andy Young, who was ambassador to the UN. He was the governor of, I don't know if he was the governor, mayor of Atlanta for 3 terms or something like that. He was our ambassador to the UN. He was sending Nelson Mandela for 20 years my stuff. The Healthy Bone and Joint Pack, the Rebound. Why did he do that? Because in 1991, Andy Young was scheduled to have both his knees replaced. He had bone-to-bone arthritis. Mike Glenn introduced us. I got him on the Healthy Bone and Joint Packs, appropriate for his body weight, and in 90 days regrew the cartilage in his knees. He's never had to have any joint surgery in 22 years. So he's been sending Nelson Mandela my stuff, buying extra and sending it to Nelson Mandela for 20 years. That's why he lived to be 95. Are you beginning to get a picture here? Now here's my favorite obituary. I love this obituary. This is a great story. It tells everything. This guy here is the oldest man in America when he died at 112 in December of 2008. Died at 112, George Francis. And George Francis lived through 19 U.S. presidents. His average lifespan is 75 if you take out JFK. Okay. And presidents have at least one college or university degree. Most of them, if they're lawyers, will have 2 or 3. They're cared for by medical doctors who have 2, basically 2. They're pre-med and they're medical degrees. Some of them will have, if they have specialties, they might have a 3rd degree or a 4th degree. If they go to jail, they might have the 5th degree. But the doctors who take care of these presidents are not country bumpkin doctors. These are the best of the best, right? And they lived to be 56, exactly half of George's age. I mean, I couldn't have paid for this. What makes this story so interesting is George was an illiterate black fellow living out in the swamps, Louisiana. Never been to a doctor, had no insurance because he never had a paid job where he had a paycheck and withholdings and any medical benefits. He made his living by catching catfish and crawdads and selling them to Cajun restaurants in New Orleans. Had no utilities. Had no insurance, no doctors. The oldest man in America. What on earth is going on here? Well, when he died, the reporters were smart enough to ask his daughter, what did your daddy do? And this is her reading the newspaper to him because he's illiterate. He's illiterate. Never got past 6th grade. He's illiterate. Just a one school, one room schoolhouse kind of thing. So they asked her, what did your daddy do to live to be 112? And she said, he broke all the rules of healthy eating. Who came up with the rules of healthy eating? Medical doctors who live to be 56. So he just did the opposite of what medical doctors said. And she went on to say, he broke all the rules of healthy eating with a diet heavy dairy, eggs, and large sandwiches. Dairy, eggs, and large sandwiches. Now we're talking about cholesterol and saturated fat here. The oldest man in America. Never saw a doctor. Couldn't read. Illiterate. The oldest man right now, documented by the Guinness World Book of Records. If you look in the book Rare Earths and Cures under longevity, you look in the book Immortality, this tribe, the Amara Indians in Bolivia, where this fellow comes from, is in there, the top 20 longevity cultures on Earth. Usually number 2. They've never quite hit number 1, but they're constantly at number 2. Their villages are 13,000 feet. They're always adjacent to Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. The oldest man in America, in the world, the oldest man in the world, South America, but in the world, is an Amara Indian. He's a sheep herder. Every morning, before dawn, he wakes up and takes his flock of sheep up above where he lives. He lives at 13,000 feet elevation. He takes his sheep another 1,000 feet up, around 14,000 feet. He's there all day. He herds sheep 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. 123 years old. His name is Carmelo Flores Lara, oldest living person ever documented. And in October of 2011, they recognized he was going to be there, and this year they documented him again as still the oldest living person. No doctors, no pharmaceuticals, no insurance, nothing that you would go there for health care. I mean, these are about as primitive people as you can get. They have nothing. No utilities. He lives in a mud hut with a thatched roof. He's still herding sheep at 14,000 foot elevation at age 123. No cane, no walker, no electric wheelchair. Remember I told you about genetics. The 850 biotech companies, 850 gene screening things. These guys need to know their anatomy a little bit. He's got prostate cancer in his left knee. He's got asthma in his right shoulder. Celiac disease in his right shoulder. I mean, these guys don't know anything, right? No wonder they're having a problem. Of course, eugenics, like Francis Galton and Hitler, still hasn't changed. Have all these dating clubs for people with IQ over a certain amount, kind of thing. All the beautiful people, smart people. Everybody else is, we're going to spend money on the beautiful people and the smart people. Everybody else, you're out, right? It's still eugenics. And here's what he said. Gene sequencing is not the solution to curing cancer and diabetes and all these other diseases. The solution is good chemistry, good biochemistry, nutrition. They all sat there with their mouth open. Nobody was breathing. The guy who got the Nobel Prize for it said it's all been irrelevant, is the word he used. They went down the wrong rabbit hole. It's not genetic. Now, all the reporters ran out of there, called the editor and said, well, you can't believe what this guy just said. So these editors are writing down the story, they're emailing them and all this stuff. They go to the medical schools there and say, we want your input on this. Oh, James Watson, he's 80 years old. He doesn't know anything. He's got dementia. Why would you it never appeared in any other newspaper. Thank God my wife saved this for me. This never appeared in any other newspaper around the world. It never appeared anywhere. But we're going to fix that. Because this is a cover from our new book coming out in March of this year. It's already been picked up by a big publishing house, a branch of Random House, big New York publishing company. The death of the genetic theory of disease transmission. Remember, doctors thought diseases were caused by evil spirits. And then they thought they could cure diseases by finding a panacea if they could just turn lead into gold. And then they knew that they could cure all diseases because they were caused by what was called spontaneous generation. That one lasted for a couple thousand years. And then there was the germ theory. Oh, everything's caused by germs. 1 million British and Japanese sailors died in a 100-year period from scurvy after the basic sailor knew that you could eat cabbage and citrus fruit and prevent it and cure it. 1 million British sailors and Japanese sailors documented died in that 100-year period from scurvy because doctors were still looking for the germ. Right after the Civil War, there was a string of what was called retardation centers all down the East Coast, across the Old South, the Confederate States. The retardation centers were built by the American government out of the goodness of their hearts and your tax money to take care of people who had pellagra because they knew that it was caused by a germ. And they wanted to isolate these people just like they did for tuberculosis. So they built these retardation centers for these people that had mental illnesses and from pellagra, which is a vitamin B3 deficiency. It's a niacin deficiency. And for 150 years, they're pursuing the germ until one guy went to an orphanage where all the kids had pellagra and just gave them fresh fruit and vegetable and cured it in a couple of weeks. So you shouldn't be too surprised that the graveyards are full of medical theories that have been wrong, including the genetic theory. It's been the biggest financial disaster ever. So here we go now. You know it's coming. In the contract, they're going to have more publicity about this book than any other book out there in history. Why? Because they believe that this is going to have the same impact on medical science as Gregor Mendel and Charles Darwin.
Do you agree with the findings of Dr. Bruce Lipton?
I don't even know who Dr. Bruce Lipton is. He must be some local guy.
No, he's a very famous biologist.
Did he start the tea company? I don't know who Joseph Lipton is. What did he discover?
He says that the DNA is not genetic.
Well, DNA is not genetic.
That's right.
But I discovered it. I discovered that in 1977. When did he say it?
Yeah, he stole you.
Huh?
He stole your stuff.
He stole my stuff. Now, this picture is profound. This picture is taken in 1978. Oh, by the way, the guy who wrote the foreword is Jeffrey Bland. He was Linus Pauling's last PhD student. He was the director of the Pauling Institute for 8 years. This is not some schluck guy here, right? He's a brilliant guy. He and I have been good friends for 35 years. And I really didn't expect him to write the foreword to this because he said, I could hear him say, well, that's kind of controversial, Wallach. I want to see more before I put my... So we sent him a copy of the early manuscript, the titles, subtitle, and he called me about 2 days later. He says, I'm in. I'll write the foreword for you. Because over the years, he's figured it out too, right? So at any rate, this is profound because in 1977, I discovered the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis in a monkey at the Yerkes Primate Center at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Not a schlucky place. I mean, this is one of the pinnacles of science in America. This was looked at by all the experts in cystic fibrosis, and they said, you know, Wallach, you're correct. This is the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis, no doubt about it. This is a classic case of cystic fibrosis. Nobody can deny this. What we want to know is, how many other monkeys have this? Well, I did biopsies of age peers of this monkey in a gang cage. They're not related in any other way. I did liver and pancreatic biopsies, and they all had cystic fibrosis. Well, I tracked back the diet of that group, and I figured it out. I knew by then I'd already done like almost 30,000 autopsies, 8,000 in humans and 22,000 in animals, 10 million chemistries. The book I wrote in that is 1,200 pages. It's in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. So this isn't just smoking pot and coming up with a wild theory. This is based on 10 million chemistries. Okay, looking at nutrition and pollution and all that kind of stuff. That's why Jeffrey Bland likes me. Because nobody else has ever done that. I'm not smarter than anybody else, but nobody has the experience. Okay? And so, I'm going to divert here just a second. It's worth 3 or 4 slides for you to see this. Because this is all coming out. This is a major part of the book. And here's the Emory University news release, 1978. Scientists at the Yerkes Primate Research Center, Emory University, have discovered cystic fibrosis in a young rhesus monkey at autopsy. The first non-human case, blah, blah, blah. This appears to be the first animal model of cystic fibrosis. We're all excited about it. That's me, Joel Wallach, right? I'm the guy that made the discovery. And these guys are like crazy with this. And then they fired me. They fired me. 24 hours after I told them that I could create 1,000 baby monkeys with cystic fibrosis in 6 months if they wanted that many. We could have every university study cystic fibrosis, and we'll have it. We'll know exactly how to prevent it and cure it within weeks. And they fired me. They said, Wallach, you must be sniffing good. You must be smoking pot, because everybody knows it's genetic. That's why I'm considered one of the founders of epigenetics. That's why Jeff Bland is so excited about this book, because it tells the whole story, blow by blow, detail by detail, every scuzzbag doctor involved in getting me fired. Because their genetic career was on the line. They didn't care about the kids. They did not care about kids. They wanted to protect their little dung heap. At first, this is what the newspaper said, because of that news release. Cystic fibrosis finding is hailed. Breakthrough reported in the cystic fibrosis fight. And then it went to theory on cystic fibrosis is disputed. So I went back to school and became a physician. 1978, and began as an advanced standing student. So in 1978, right after I was fired, I began treating kids with cystic fibrosis. This little girl here, Sydney Myers, was up for a double lung transplant at 2 years old. Got her going. Reversed her genetic markers. Oh, by the way, this is the study that Dr. Milan and I did in China. Common denominators in etiology and pathology of visceral lesions of cystic fibrosis and Kishan disease, cardiomyopathy heart disease in China, Kishan province. I should have this over here. Okay. There she is at 8 years old. We have dozens of kids now that we've reversed their genetic markers, positive sweat tests, so on. Little Italian kid. I mean, the hospitals, this is a blind study, not a double-blind study, but a blind study, because we're giving them this stuff and the hospitals don't know it. They're testing them every couple of months. They go positive, 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 negative, what's going on here? Why do they suddenly go negative? They were on our stuff for 30 days. When they're just less than a year old, in 2 weeks, they convert back to normal. When they're 3 years old, it takes them 2, 3, 4 weeks. When they're 10 years old, it takes them 4 to 6 months. When they're 25 years old, it takes them a year, but they go back to normal. Now, in 2011, in the International Laboratory Animal Research Journal, the entire journal in June of 2011 was devoted to serendipitous, accidental findings involving non-human primates. The reason why they did that was because in 2011, the federal government canceled all research in primates because it's too expensive. $1,000 a day compared to a mouse is 10 cents a day. So you use mice. If you want to use primates, go to Bill Gates Foundation. Go to Warren Buffett. Don't come to us. So they did this whole issue on the accidental findings in primates that helped human health to say, please reconsider, don't kill. I mean, we got billions of dollars worth of facilities here and monkeys. What are we doing? We're going to kill them all? I mean, come on. We can't just suddenly stop here, so give us 10 years, 20 years. They're trying to soften the blow here. Well, you might guess, you probably guessed, that they gave 5 top stories and accidental findings in primates that benefited human health. Guess what number 2 was? Cystic fibrosis in a non-human primate. Emory University, 1978, reported a classic textbook case of cystic fibrosis found in humans had been identified in a non-human primate, an animal for which there has not been described previously. An assistant veterinary pathologist, me, actually, it was more than that. I was a comparative pathologist. I was doing human and animal autopsy, but they call me an assistant veterinary pathologist. I mean, now here it comes. Now be prepared for this. Let's see here. Oh, we're down here. The diagnosis. Oh, there we go. An assistant veterinary pathologist whose name was withheld by Emory University. They were so embarrassed that they fired me in 1978, they wouldn't even give out my name. Now, are they that stupid? If they say, oh, gosh, this was identified in 1978, well, that's easy. They just go back to 1978, find the news releases. So I started winning all these kind of medals based on the stuff that went on in 1978. Now, millions of kids have died since then. And they're still going to die. Because they never said, well, there was a failed theory or whatever. They said nothing. They just said one was found. Somebody needs to go to jail. Well, here's the result of that study, and here's why I'm considered one of the founders of epigenetics. Up until this award, 2011, I'm the first veterinarian and the first naturopathic physician to get this award. For 28 years in a row, only medical doctors and MD, PhDs got the award. I'm the first veterinarian and the first naturopathic doctor to get the award. And of course, I just loved it that they used the Emory University photograph. You gotta love it, right? To show that this discovery has been made by this assistant pathologist who nobody named. That really pissed these people off, okay? They could have kind of rectified or at least gotten some sympathy from me if they'd have said, okay, we fired this guy, it was stupid on our part, but those guys are all dead or gone, blah, blah, blah. And so this is Dr. Strauser awarding me the gold medal, the Klaus Schwarz medal. Now, why the Klaus Schwarz medal? Because Klaus Schwarz is the guy who discovered that selenium is an essential nutrient. Hooah! I'm very, very proud of that. Okay, now we're going to talk muscular dystrophy. How many of you heard of muscular dystrophy? Have you heard of Jerry Lewis telethon? Well, Jerry Lewis hasn't done the telethon for the last 3 years because of me. It was an unintended consequence. We gave him 5 years of studies on muscular dystrophy kids that were curing. Reverse all their genetic markers. Again, when they're 3 years old, a couple of weeks, they can lay there like a worm. In 2-3 weeks, they're up playing soccer. All their genetic markers, their blood tests, everything's normal. Biopsies are normal. We gave a pile like this to Jerry Lewis on, I don't know, maybe 100 cases. Their doctors called them cured, not me. We don't know why, but they don't have it anymore on their charts. So we gave them copies of that. We gave them email copies, hard copies, and say, Jerry, we don't want any money from the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation. We don't need to do any research. We already know the cure. We know the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy. All we want to know is, these are Jerry's kids. Do you want to be the one to make the announcement that, thank God, the cure has been found? Finally. Would you like to be the one to make it? He says, well, yeah. And so he takes all this to the medical committee of the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation. He said, look, this guy Wallach has sent these in. I don't know much about this, but I read it, and it looks like they're negative now, and they were positive before. They said, Wallach, and they looked me up, and they said, well, he's the guy that said cystic fibrosis in 1978 could be prevented, cured, not genetic. This guy's a nut. We're not going to even waste our time reading his material. And Jerry Lewis said, quote, you know, I've helped you guys for 22 years. I've helped you raise over $1 billion in 22 years. I've never asked for anything for myself. He said, I really would like you to read this stuff, and you tell me then that it's useless, then I'll feel at least we've done our best and we've looked at it, and maybe his claims are nuts, but at least we didn't miss a chance to examine every stone, right? We look under every stone. But if you tell me you're not going to even look at it, I'm really going to be offended here. And they fired Jerry Lewis.
Whoa.
They fired Jerry Lewis.
Wow.
That's why he hasn't done the telethon. He hasn't spoken about it because he has a contract with them, non-disclosure, can't work with anybody else for 10 years after they part, all that kind of stuff. So we're having our first telethon in February. Nonprofit organization that already existed called Defying Muscular Dystrophy, Defying Muscular Dystrophy, D-E-F-Y-I-N-G, Defying Muscular Dystrophy, Defying MD is another way, .com. And this organization has already, we chose to be associated with them because they have their nonprofit status, but they already have an FDA-approved study that they did and published. So we know, and so we say, okay, our goal is to raise $10 million. What we're going to do, we're not going to take any of it. All the costs and everything involved, we're going to cover ourselves. We're not going to take 100% of it's going to the kids. What we're going to do is take these families that have out of their own pocket, bought all the supplements, did the diets just exactly as we said, gave us the records. We're going to reimburse them for their expenditure for their supplements for the 1 year. That's what we're going to do with the money. If we only get $100,000, we'll equal it up and divide it up. But our goal is $10 million, which will then give everybody their money back that are involved. We're not going to take a single penny from it. And so this telethon, you want to watch for it. It's coming out February 21st and 22nd. And if you're thinking about donating anything this year, go look on defyingmusculardystrophy.com. Go look at it. Because they have films every 2 weeks of all these kids that have started the program. And you can see the progress. Kids that couldn't even raise their arms are now riding tricycles and ringing the bells, and it's just amazing. Every 2 weeks they have another film of these people. And so if you have it in your hearts to give a little donation, I don't care if it's $10, anything. It'd be very sweet. Okay, this organization was started by this guy here, Todd Harrison, just turned 25 a week ago. This picture was taken a year ago, and he's been on our program for over a year. And here's a guy who's been in a wheelchair for 8 years, and now you couldn't tell there's anything wrong with him. Just look at his films every 2 weeks. Okay, so it goes back again. Why isn't Jerry Lewis doing the telethon because they fired him. They don't care about the kids either. They didn't want their income stream interrupted. They're taking 80% of it anyway for administrative cost. Shame on them. Shame on them. Absolutely criminal. Okay, so now you know why we're passionate about this. Why did I start this company? Is because I needed an army to get the information out. Okay, now I'm going to spend just another 10, 15 minutes, and I'll be done. We'll open up for questions, and you can give some announcements, all this kind of stuff. This is the basic problem. This is from Food Chemistry, April 2012. And Food Chemistry is a very boring but very well-respected journal. They send graduate students out to the fields, and they harvest carrots and beets and corn and wheat and tomatoes and all kinds of stuff, and they run tests on them for pollution and nutrition. They publish every month. The heading is carrots, and they have all the fields that came from what state, and they came from what county, and all the analysis, and only scientists would really appreciate the value of that. But I read it every month because I'm interested in pollution, because I've found the first case of mass die-off in America from pollution when I was doing all those autopsies for the Center for Disease Control. At any rate, April 16, 2012, they looked at 8 commercial baby foods, Similac, Enfamil, things like Gerber's, very well-respected baby foods. They said, commercially available baby foods may contain less than 20% of the recommended levels of minerals and vitamins. Less than 20%. Dog food has 100%. Chicken food has 100%. Laboratory rat food has 100%. Your babies and grandbabies have less than 20%. Now, how do you make up the difference? Are you going to go to the doctor and say, hey, please, please, can I have permission to give my baby a supplement? Don't even waste your fuel to get there. Don't waste your telephone bill to lift up the telephone and call them. Don't embarrass yourself. The reason why it's this way is because the pediatricians who came up with these formulas had no training in nutrition. It's absolutely downright criminal. You would not tolerate this in any other industry. Okay, so why do things look generational? I mean, that's an obvious question. Why do things look generational? Well, I have 5 generations in my family with diabetes. You're telling me that it's not genetic. It's obvious it's genetic because I have 5 generations. Well, here it is, folks. Have you ever heard of gluten intolerance? Okay, gluten intolerance doesn't mean you're allergic to wheat. A lot of doctors will test you for wheat allergy and say, well, you're not allergic to wheat. Go ahead and eat all the wheat you want. Bam, you're dead. Gluten intolerance is kind of like poison ivy. I can guarantee you, and I just met most of you, I can guarantee you that none of you in this room is allergic to poison ivy because you don't eat it for salad. There's no pollen associated with it, so nobody's allergic to poison ivy. But I guarantee you're all intolerant of it. Nobody would voluntarily, without a lot of money being offered to them, drop their pants and let me take some nice, fresh, juicy poison ivy and rub it all over your bottom because you'd get contact dermatitis, wouldn't you? It'd be bad. It'd be really bad. Okay? You would not like the result. The same way, when you eat gluten and you have a gluten intolerance, you're not allergic to wheat, but you're going to get a contact enteritis. And enteritis is an inflammation of the intestines. Some doctors call it leaky gut syndrome because when they test you, they'll test what you put in here and it all comes out the other end. They say, well, you got leaky gut because they're assuming their little pea brains are absorbing it. You're not absorbing it. You never absorbed it at all. You are not what you eat. That old adage, you are what you eat, that's absolutely positively not true. You're not what you eat. You are what you absorb. And when you're gluten intolerant, what happens is those little finger-like villi that help move the food along, also, they increase your absorbent surface by 85%. What happens is, when you're gluten intolerant, they go away over a period of months and years. They just go away. And suddenly now, your intestines are just a smooth tube like a garden hose. You lose all those villi. Some of the classic symptoms of a basic gluten intolerance are eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea, asthma, chronic bronchitis. And then you wind up with 20, 30 different diseases over the years. As time goes along, you can't, even if you're supplementing, you can't absorb the stuff. You wind up with all these diseases. This is a cover article in the New York Times Sunday Magazine, February 4th, 2013. Why is that? The title was, Eat No Wheat. The cover picture was a guy in a hazmat suit holding a slice of organic whole wheat bread. Now, while these diseases are not genetically transmitted, gluten intolerance is transmitted by cord blood and breast milk. So one of my worst nightmares is dealing with women who love their breast. I am woman. I have breast. I have all this milk, but my baby is one of these colicky babies and can't tolerate my milk. So I'm going to save the world. I'm going to donate my milk to the Lychee League. And they give somebody else's baby a gluten intolerance. You see, human breast milk is not perfect food for many people. If you're gluten intolerant, it is not perfect food. I get them on the radio. They call me all the time. Oh, I have an autoimmune disease. Well, tell me about it. Yeah, I've been to 27 doctors over the last 14 years. I also have autoimmune disease. Every year I get a new disease. I have 22 diseases now. I'm on 27 prescription drugs. I have all these problems. They've opened me up and operated on me and taken this out and taken that out, and they're prepared to do it again because nobody can figure out what I got. They say, did you have your appendix out? Yeah. Did you have asthma as a kid? Well, yeah, I still have it. Any skin problems? Yeah, I got rosacea. Well, you have gluten intolerance. Did any doctor ever tell you that? No, but I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. For more than 20 years, not a single doctor, if they knew it, said anything about it. I just think they're ignorant and they didn't even know it. But they should all go to jail because ignorance of the law is not a defense, is it? Somebody has to stand back and say, you know, we've been treating Crohn's disease the same way for 70 years. It all winds up the same way in disaster. Maybe we should relook at this thing. You see, there's no competition. What's the odds of finding the right information if everybody knows the earth is flat? Couple more here. We do have Go Foods. We just bought this company this year. They're all organic. No trans fatty acids or hydrogenases, no MSG, no pesticides or herbicides, non-GMO. 50% of the 25 foods we have are gluten and lactose free, and they're 25-year shelf life. We just sent an entire boatload to the Philippines. We just gave it to them. Okay, our distributors all chipped in. We sent, I don't know how many 100 tons of this stuff, literally 100 tons of this food over there for those people. They were glad to have it. Okay, here's the bottom line, folks. 5 or 6 more slides, we're done. Why do we call ourselves 90 for life? Because there's 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. How long do you need them? For life. Just like oxygen. How long do you need oxygen? For life. How long do you need water? For life. Okay? You need the 90 essential nutrients. This is all based on, people say, you got research on that? Well, it's all based on trillions of dollars worth of research over the last 100 years. Do agricultural schools, do the U.S. Department of Agriculture, veterinary schools count? Of course they do. They go, well, that's just in animals. It hasn't been proven in humans. We're prepared to kill you until it's proven in humans. Well, they test drugs in animals, don't they, and they use them. So that's kind of a weak excuse. 90 essential nutrients. Why do they call them essential nutrients? For 2 reasons. Number 1, you can't make them. You've got to consume them every day, either as food or supplements. Number 2, if they're missing for any length of time, you get horrible diseases, all of which are fatal. Some of them, a total potassium deficiency, you'll die of heart stoppage within a few seconds. Calcium deficiency causes 147 different diseases, all of which will kill you, but it might take 40 years to kill you for the calcium deficiency. Every medical and dental specialty loves calcium deficiencies because they all make most of their money from a calcium deficiency. 16 minerals, you notice 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients are minerals. That's why we focus a lot on them. 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. This, I love this. This is a cover on a weekend magazine in the Globe and Mail, which is sort of the Canadian equivalent of the USA Today. The bottom of this cover article was this, and the top was this. They said, which are you going to choose, pills or produce? Now, can you tell me how much vitamin C is in that tomato? Can you tell me how much folic acid is in that green bell pepper? Can you tell me how many milligrams of calcium are in that apple? No. Are you willing to throw your kids and grandkids and your spouse, your brothers and sisters, your mama under the bus, assuming that there's everything you need in that food? For supposed to be the pinnacle of God's creations, that's pretty stupid. On the other hand, you can take any one of these and look on the bottle they came in, how many milligrams of calcium, how many micrograms of B12 and so forth are in there. So why don't you do both? That's what I do. I do both. I like to eat well. I eat very, very good food. My wife is a great cook, and we have a lot of fun eating. We eat good food. But we also are obsessive about this part. We don't care what's in or not in the food. I don't care. I don't need it. When you look at a label on the back of a can of dog food, that doesn't reflect what's in the food. That's what we put in the food. If we were to analyze every batch of dog food and say, okay, we need to put 3 more milligrams of this in here to make it right and 20 more milligrams of that in there, it costs you $500 a can of dog food. So we just put everything we know they need in there. That's what's on the label. We have no earthly idea what's in there. We screen it for pollution and poisons. We don't analyze it for nutrition. We just put everything we know they need in there, and anything that's in there nutritionally is value added. You go to bed every night saying, I ate well. I had 4 different colors on my food plate. I eat variety every day, and I know I'm going to make it to 100. And you die at 67 while you're jogging, drinking water. This is a very profound article. And all I had to do was trim this up a little bit to get it on this page. It's just a great, great article. Now, where did rich people get their supplements 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago? Mummy dust. There was actually a business where the grave robbers would grind up mummies, particularly of royal mummies, and sell it in bags of this mummy dust as a supplement. Now, think about it. They had bone meal in there. They had hyaluronic acid from the cartilage and the tendons. They had B12 and selenium in the liver. Mummy dust was a pretty good supplement. If you think about it. But I mean, only rich people could get mummy dust. I ate my mummy. Okay, is that cool? But there's a whole section in this new book coming out about mummy dust and the analyses of mummy dust, all the stuff, all the whole business of mummy dust. I mean, it went on for hundreds of years. After a while, when they ran out of real mummies, they go and kill poor people and dehydrate them in the desert and chop them up and grind them up and sell them for mummy dust. Because there was too much money in it to give it up, right? Doctors are very creative. Well, here's where the poor people got their minerals. So be prepared. Are you prepared for this? How many remember going to your parents' house, your grandparents' house, and they had a wood stove? Okay. What did they do with the wood ash every morning? They put them in the recycling bin to save the earth. Where'd the wood ashes go? In the garden. Went in the garden. Now, wood ashes are not ashes. In the old days, everything that was burned had some kind of white or gray or brown or beige powder. They called them ashes. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust kind of stuff. But really, when you analyze those wood ashes, are really the minerals that the tree sucked up out of the ground. Now, wood ashes are all not all alike, because nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate ribble ice cream. Some wood ashes, some plant minerals from a tree, have 3 minerals in it. Some have 10, some have 24, some have 40, some have 60. Kind of like in the Nicoyan Peninsula, in the Bolivian village, the Aymara people, like Laura, 123 years old. Dr. Lee Chung Yu, 256. They'd burn wood, take those plant minerals, a.k.a. wood ashes, throw them in the garden, then they'd eat the tomatoes and the squash and the okra and the sweet potatoes and the onions and the corn, whatever it was, and they're getting their mineral supplements through the food that they've supplemented and eating the food. They didn't get their mineral supplements through capsules, but they got them mineral supplements through the food that they supplemented with these minerals. Now here it comes. Here's the bottom line, and then we'll end it. The bottom line is this, folks. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, it all ended. We know the exact moment because this story was in the front page. It was on the front page of every newspaper in the world. It was on the front page of every newspaper in the world. This story came out Monday, September 4th, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 1882. It all ended. After thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of people supplementing with minerals through wood ashes. It all ended in one heartbeat. It ended when this guy here, Thomas Edison, pulled the switch on the first commercial electric generating plant on Pearl Street in New York City on the bluff overlooking the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. Here comes the ultimate question. How many plant minerals, how many wood ashes are left over when you fuel your home with electricity, propane, and natural gas? 0! Nada! Zippo, nothing. And here comes the other ultimate question. What did you replace as source of mineral supplements with that humans have done for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years? Nothing. That's why you're getting sicker, because every time you harvest a crop, it pulls a little bit of minerals out of the soil. If you're not replacing it, you harvest another crop, it keeps pulling minerals out of the soil. And after a while, you got a dust bowl because there's no more minerals left in the soil. Nothing will grow without putting some miracle grow in there or something. But that's only 3 nutrients, NPK. What about the other 87? Are you beginning to get the picture here? So this guy, unwittingly, unintended consequences, killed America, health-wise. Well, here, I guess I got 2 more slides, I apologize. Here's what makes us unique. This is a compost pile. It has 77 certified organic plant minerals in it. These guys are standing on a road that's 3,000 foot elevation above sea level. This cap up here is 25 foot thick marine limestone. We know that because the animal and plant fossils are marine animal and plant fossils, came from the sea. So this compost, these plants, is 100% plants. You take a handful of it, it looks like coffee grounds. Look at it in the microscope, you can see all the plant cells and little veins and everything in plants, like leaves and things. This has been under the sea for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's totally pollution free. I mean, there is no pollution in there. Okay? It has all 60 essential minerals in optimal amounts, and this is the core of everything we do. We have 25 different ways to get the 90 essential nutrients. We have 1,000 products. And my favorite to get the 90 essential nutrients is a Healthy Start Pack. You heard me talk about this several times today. This is designed for 100 pounds of human flesh per month for perfect nutrition, perfect biochemical nutrition. I take 2 of these a day, plus all my other supplements, to avoid all the other health problems. I don't wait until they happen. I just take everything like I was, trying to cure it, so I don't get it. It's called preventive maintenance, right? Well, this is good for 100 pounds of human flesh per month. So if you give this to a 50-pound kid or a 50-pound Spanish midget who's 4 foot tall and 40 years of age, it doesn't matter if they're 50 pounds. This will last them 2 months. Give this to a 100-pound person, give or take 10 pounds, it'll last a month. You give it to a 200-pound person, it'll last 2 weeks. You give it to a 300-pound person, it'll last 10 days if you're giving it optimally for body weight. Then we went one step farther, and this is the last slide. Promise you. I'm not a politician. Okay? This is a Healthy Start Pack I just showed you for 100 pounds of human flesh per month. If you have diabetes or any blood sugar problem, you take the Healthy Blood Sugar Pack. You take one of these per 100 pounds of body weight per month. You check your fasting blood sugar every morning before you medicate yourself, and as your blood sugar is dropping, your A1C hemoglobin is coming down, you keep reducing your medication just like your doctor taught you to do. Usually within 2 to 4 weeks, you weaned off your medication, you're an ex-diabetic. People say you can't do that, that's genetically transmitted. Oh, you have a gluten intolerance if you have 5 generations in your family with it. It's not genetically transmitted. And then, Healthy Bone and Joint Pack. If you have arthritis, lupus, tendonitis, degenerative disc disease, peripheral neuropathies, anything to do with bones and joints and disc and cartilage and ligaments and tendons and muscles, one Healthy Bone and Joint Pack for 100 pounds of body weight. Healthy Digestion Pack if you have reflux. There is no such thing as acid reflux. Anybody who says acid reflux should be put in jail. Anybody who puts you on proton pump inhibitor should be put in jail. Why do you have reflux? Because you don't have enough stomach acid. It should be called lack of acid reflux. Because you don't have enough stomach acid. Well, there are 3 functions of stomach acid. Number 1, your Castle's intrinsic factor can't work to help you absorb B12 without you need your pH very acid, needs to be below 2. 1 being the most acid, 14 being the most alkaline, 7 neutral. You start getting up towards neutral, 4, 5, 6, your intrinsic factor won't work. You got to go into your doctor's office every month, get a B12 shot. Otherwise your B12 level, your blood goes down. That's because you restricted salt. Salt is raw material for your stomach chief cells to make stomach acid. Anybody who tells you restrict salt should be put in jail for the rest of their life when they die of natural causes. Their body should be fed to a rabid dog, and the rabid dog's poop fed to another rabid dog. Okay? And then the second reason why you need stomach acid is for pepsin to work. Pepsin is a enzyme your stomach makes to digest proteins down into individual amino acids. If you don't do that, You get a new allergy every month. I used to be able to eat this all my life, and now suddenly I'm allergic to it. That's because you didn't have enough stomach acid to break that protein down into an individual amino acid. And then thirdly, equally or even greater importance, the reason why you need to have an acid stomach environment below 2, pH below 2, is because it keeps your stomach sterile. Bacteria, viruses, fungus, and yeast won't grow in there with a pH under 2. Get above 3, 4, and 5, stuff grows in there. Like in vinegar, it'll grow in there. And every time you eat something, it's moist and dark and warm in there. It's kind of like Silence of the Lambs. Those moths, they just love that environment, right? It's a perfect environment for those moths. Your stomach, at a pH of 4, 5, and 6, is a perfect environment for yeast and bacteria. You eat stuff, they begin to ferment it immediately. You generate gas. You start belching and burping up the fluid in your stomach, which is not really acid. It's mildly acid, maybe a pH of 4, 5, or 6. And it tastes like vinegar. You say, oh, I got acid reflux. No, you got lack of acid reflux. So we actually have a wonderful product called Ultimate Enzymes. It's part of our healthy digestion pack. You take 1 or 2 of those, 3 to 10 minutes before each meal with a couple ounces of water. It reacidifies your stomach, solves all these problems. If you need some emergency care just in case you have something really go bad when you're out someplace, these are Ancient Legacy peppermint oil. Put 4 or 5 drops of peppermint oil into a cup of hot water. I've had people for 23 years, they couldn't even talk. One pastor's wife, Pastor Hunter in Fort Wayne, Indiana, he tells this story from the pulpit, so I'm not telling it out of school. He was there because it's the oldest black church in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's a pastor there, and he was a big, tall, 6'5" basketball player, but he had knee problems and diabetes and high blood pressure. So I was telling him what to do for himself, and his wife is sitting next to me, belching, burping, blood. He says, "Ma'am, how long have you been this uncomfortable?" I didn't want to say anything bad, so I said, "How long have you been suffering like this?" And she couldn't even answer. He says, "Oh, she's been like that for 12 years. For 12 years, background noise for him. That's the way it's been. She has to stay downstairs because she disrupts the church service and she can't sing in the choir anymore. And so, she's persona non grata in the church." And said, "Oh, have you tried peppermint oil?" She goes, "Oh, oh, oh! Oh, yeah, the doctor told her you can't have peppermint oil. It's too acid." So I happened to have some with me. And I said, "Hold tight." So I go over. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning in a hotel lobby. So I pull a cup of hot water. I put 4 drops of my peppermint oil in her thing. I said, "Don't drink it. Just smell it." I'm looking at him with one eye like a chameleon, looking at her with the other one. And I'm talking to him about his arthritis and his high blood pressure and his diabetes, what to do with him, writing down what he needs. And she's smelling it and smelling it and smelling it. She couldn't resist. She took a couple of sips. I'm going to demonstrate to you what happened like in 10 seconds after she took those 2 sips. She stands bolt upright. She says, "I'm cured! I'm cured! I'm cured! I'm cured! I'm cured!" This is 1 o'clock in the morning in the lobby of this hotel. Everybody's waking up, lights are going, phones going off. What's going on in here? She's never had reflux again. She's been taking the Ultimate Daily tablets and taking her peppermint oil if she ever had kind of an episode.
Wow.
Hello? Didn't God say, "Go forth and be a salt to the earth"? Isn't that right? And doctors say, "Don't use salt." Doctors live to be 56. God lives forever. I'm going with God.
Exactly.
Okay, so you get the drill. So the bottom line is here, if you supplement before you get sick, you won't get sick. It's kind of like preventive maintenance of your car. You put oil in your car after the engine burns up or before the engine burns up? Before the engine burns up. Do the same thing for yourself. Be like me. The odds are you won't have to go to a doctor very often, and the medical system will become real humble, and hopefully we'll have nice doctors who say, this healthy start pack and the healthy bone and joint pack and the healthy blood sugar pack, healthy digestion pack is a lot better for my patients than Nexium and Prilosec and all these proton pump inhibitors, and better than bad advice of eat less and exercise more to get rid of your obesity. It'll be better than heart transplants and digitalis and water pills for congestive heart failure. It'll be much better than having to deal with kids born with terrible deformities and birth defects are totally 100% preventable. But we're going to have to do it because the doctors and the government's not going to do it. Just not going to do it. So if you think you're going to take petitions to them to move them, ain't happening. Ain't happening. So I want to thank you very much. I know I went long, but you seem like a great audience, and you came here tonight during the holidays, so I thought I'd give you more than just the cream here. I'd give you some basic stuff. And now you're armed. You know, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You're very dangerous now. Not the fact that you know this stuff, but the fact that doctors don't know this stuff. Except the two doctors who were in here tonight. They probably knew a little bit of this before they got here. So, looking for people not only to help us, I mean, you'd be customers, use this stuff and get rid of your problems, it'd be wonderful. But I'm equally interested in you becoming one of our sort of physician's assistants. We pay obscene amounts of money. We're publicly traded. I'm the only naturopathic doctor who's publicly traded. We're moving on up to the NASDAQ. We started out in the pink sheets, then went to the bulletin board, and then we went to the OTC, whatever it is, and now we're poised to go to the NASDAQ. Because this stuff works. I've been doing it for 35 years. It never fails. It never fails. Never. You do exactly, you follow the recipe exactly, it will never fail. And so, did you want to say anything before I answer a few questions or give away a few things?
Do the giveaway?
Yep.
Sure.
No, go ahead. Go for
I'm
it.
going to give away a few items.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc.
I'll answer your questions in a few seconds here.
Okay, you have your ticket ready? We're going to call out some numbers. 815059. Everybody have that?
Somebody's got to have it.
Dude, go for it, brother.
All right.
Your book and CD. Look at that.
Hey, how old are you, young fella? 13. I have 4 brothers who started me with me when they were 10 to 14 years of age. That was 14 years ago. All 4 of them are millionaires now in our business. So you really want to consider doing this. It's a one-time fee at $10. Your parents will help you out. A one-time fee at $10. You become a student of this information. By the time you're 16 years old, you'll be able to pay for your own car, pay for your own car insurance. That'll be a burden off your family.
815058. Hey, congratulations.
All right. See, it's worth sitting in the front row.
Yeah. Okay. One more giveaway. Okay. Eight 815-050.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you very much. Anyone have questions for the doc?
Let me put one more file in here. I almost forgot it here a second. It was underneath that stuff. Let me put this away before I do forget it. Okay, let's take 20, 30 minutes. We'll answer questions. We'll start out there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you had well, I've got 2 questions if I can. Have you had any success of people who have had peripheral neuropathy, that have regained normal feeling in the extremities?
Absolutely. We do this 1,000 times a day. Been doing it for 35 years. It's a very simple disease. It's a back problem when you have peripheral neuropathy. It's always a back problem. How much have you shrunk since you were 20 years old? How much have you shrunk in height?
I really haven't.
I don't believe you.
Now, literally, I'm 6 foot tall, as same as I was at 18.
Okay, anybody here 6 foot tall exactly? Come up here, please. You look taller than 6'2" to me.
Yeah.
You got big shoes on.
I get accused of that.
Okay. Just stand back to back.
Bigger boy.
Yeah, he's a little bit taller than 6
Well, he's got thicker soles on.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, but you have degenerative disc disease is your problem. What happens is when the vertebrae get closer together, they smash the roots of the spinal nerves coming out from between the lumbar vertebrae. When you lay down at night to go to sleep, do you get creepy crawling in your legs or cramps or anything like that?
No, I used to. It's been about 15 years ago that I discovered I had this. The doctor told me it'll only get worse. It'll never get
Restless
better.
leg syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, and he also told me I was ridiculous because I was reading too much. I started reading up on it and changed my diet.
Okay, good.
And went to using no alcohol at all, because no alcohol is one of the worst things to
Now,
use.
what do you weigh?
Right now, my weight is about 185.
Okay, close enough to 200 pounds. So you're a perfect candidate. You want to write this down. You're a perfect candidate. And so you guys, so I need somebody here to write this down for them.
Sure.
So now, do you have anything else I need to know about high blood pressure, diabetes, anything like that?
I'm mildly diabetic.
Well, kind of like being pregnant. Is anybody mildly pregnant?
Well, I'm not as diabetic as I was when I discovered I was diabetic.
Yeah, because you're working on it for
ago.
diet. That's
Yeah.
good. But you're still a diabetic.
Yeah.
And people say, well, I got it under control with drugs. No, you don't.
Well,
You can have your blood sugar under control and you're still going to die of diabetes.
I've got it pretty much under control with diet and exercise.
It doesn't matter.
It's not like it was before.
Yeah, see, you got the blood sugar thing. Blood sugar is not diabetes. It's a symptom of diabetes.
Yeah.
So you can still get your symptom under control, just like you have brain cancer. You take an aspirin, you kill the pain in your brain. Have you solved your problem? No. All you've done is solve the symptom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he needs 2 healthy bone and joint packs per month. Take a full dose of everything at breakfast, full dose of everything at dinner. That'll be allowed by the 2 healthy bone and joint packs per month. And that'll also allow you to have 15 glucogel capsules a day, 5 at breakfast, 5 at lunch, 5 at dinner, and that's to rebuild the disc in your back. Even if it's a millimeter or 2 per disc, push them apart and relieve the pressure off of those roots of the spinal nerves coming out from between your vertebrae. Now, there will be 2 canisters, 2 wide mouth jars of CM cream, 1 with each of the healthy bone and joint packs. You have your lovely wife here put on your lumbar vertebrae right down the middle, 2 or 3 times a day, and about 1 inch on either side. So you're going to be a space about that big, about 2 inches wide, right down the middle, from your last rib down to your tailbone kind of thing. And it'll relieve a lot of that inflammation. A lot of times you'll get relief just even before you regrow the disc between the vertebrae, just from relieving the inflammation and swelling. Okay? And it'll all go away that quickly, very quickly. Usually 60, 90 days is gone. Very quick. Never fails. Never fails. That's a pretty bold statement. Anybody else have a question? Yes, way in the back.
When does Epigenics come out?
Epigenics is coming out in March. All this stuff is in this book, coming out in March. Again, I'm very excited about this because this, as part of the contract, this publishing company is obligated to get this on every TV program and radio and newspapers and university lecture series and all kinds of stuff. They really had their scientific committees look at this and say, this is a landmark book, and so they're pouring a lot of money and effort into it. Coming out in March of this year, next year, excuse me.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Did I wear you out? Okay. Any more questions? Last chance here. Okay, you get one more. We're done.
One of your slides there, you mentioned telomeres, and it's something that we're hearing about
Yes.
now. Could you comment on it?
Yes. There's a thing called the Hayflick limit. If you read the book Rare Earths of Incures, which came out in 1994, I talked about the Hayflick limit, which is a guy by the name of Leonard Hayflick. He's an MD, kind of a geriatric kind of guy. He was always looking at longevity, and he believed in cell culture, the cells will only divide 51 times and they were dead. They just couldn't go anymore. And he started looking at the telomeres, and every time a cell would divide in a cell culture, it would lose a little bit of length as telomere, and by the time the 51 came along, 51 duplications, the cell was dead because there's no more telomeres left. They didn't quite know what to do about it, but that was back in the 60s. And then in 2009, the Nobel Prize was given for the people who understood why these telomeres shortened every time these cells duplicated, and they came up with theories and this, that, and the other, how you prevent that from happening. We began working on that. And we actually worked with Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina, in normal human cell cultures for just this very thing. We used our products, and guess what? It just worked like a charm. Unlimited, endless duplication.
Restore your telomeres, restore the...
They never go away.
Lost.
They never go away. And so we actually came out with an additional product that just focuses on that one subject. It's being released, what is it, Wednesday or tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. Is tomorrow New Year's Eve?
Yes.
Yes, it's released tomorrow, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, something like that. You can go look on our schedule of all the conference and everything we do. It's either 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock. It's going to be released. I'm under obligation under threat of death. I can't tell you the name of it. Of course, it's all been trademarked, patented. We've had all this. We've had literally millions of dollars worth of research done by big universities, private companies. This is heavy stuff, and this prevents the telomeres from going away every time the cell duplicates. And so I started taking 2 of them twice a day. It's not something you're going to get energy like energy drink or anything like that. But it's one of those things you take forever and your engine doesn't burn out. Okay, so I started taking them about a week ago. And you're not going to tell any difference, except you're going to slowly get younger because the telomeres that have been damaged or shortened before, I'm going to sneeze here in a second, excuse me, will actually grow back to normal. If you have some damaged cells that are looking to go the wrong direction, this tablet actually has 2 pieces to it. And one piece knocks off the injured dead cells that can't be helped. And the other piece helps your telomeres regrow. I mean, it's really a great little system. And this is coming out. It's to add to the 90 essential nutrients. It's the other piece. And so we're so excited about it. And once it's out and everybody knows about it, I'm going to start doubling up. Instead of taking 4 a day like the dose is for a 150-pound man or woman, I'm going to start taking 8 a day instead of 4 a day. I'm going to take 4 twice a day instead of 2 twice a day. Because I point out the center field, and so I've got to get there, right? I'll do everything I can. Yes, sir.
Do you have anything on for prostate?
Yes. There's 2 things you have to worry about the prostate. One is enlargement. You get up at night to take a pee. You have a struggle getting the stream going. You have to urinate and all kinds of stuff like that. And there's prostate cancer. I'll start out with prostate cancer. Nobody ever dies from prostate cancer. Never kills you. When you get treated for prostate cancer, it's always the treatment that kills you. Prostate cancer will never kill you. It never goes to your liver, your lungs, or your brain. It goes regionally to your bones, your pelvis, your thigh bones, your femurs, your vertebrae. Kind of goes into this area here, but it never goes to an organ where it's going to kill you. It's the treatment that always kills you. So even the FDA says, oops, you may want to reconsider treatment for prostate cancer. But doctors who are oncologists, they keep pushing it because that's how they make their money. That's how they pay the tuition for their kids to go to Harvard. They don't have to get student loans, right? 85% of the men who die after 85 have prostate cancer. It's usually the size of the head of a pin. Has not metastasized anywhere. The PSA is like 12 and so forth. They've got prostate cancer, but it doesn't go anywhere. They die of a heart attack while they're having sex with a 20-year-old. You know, that kind of stuff. And so they get hit in a car accident and die, or fall off the roof while they're painting the house. But they don't die of prostate cancer. And prostate cancer never kills you. But what you want to do is be smart, and I'll tell you what to do about prostate cancer nutritionally in a second, because the same thing is true for enlarged prostate, benign prostate hypertrophy, BPH. And this is actually caused by nutritional deficiency. What happens to your thyroid gland when you're deficient in iodine? Does it shrink or get bigger? It gets bigger. You get a goiter. So when you're deficient in iodine, your thyroid gland gets big. What happens to your prostate gland when you're deficient in selenium? It gets big. See? So selenium deficiency causes benign prostate hypertrophy. So you take the 90 essential nutrients. If you're a man, I take extra selenium for that very reason. I don't have time to stand in front of a toilet for 5 minutes to get a stream going. And so I take 3 selenium twice a day in addition to my 2 healthy starch, actually 2 healthy bone and joint packs. I take 2 bottles a month of selenium, 3 bottles a month of selenium, so I take 3 twice a day. I also take ProstaFX, which is a blend of Asian, African, and North American herbs, which will shrink your prostate gland, even if it's already enlarged, and support normal function of the prostate gland. So I take 3 of those twice a day. That's 2 bottles of that a month. As I go around the country, I have some of our little warehouses around. So every time I go there, they have to restock me. They send the bill to my wife, they restock me, right? And that way, no matter where I go, I always have. I take. People say, "Why do you take 3 suitcases with you?" We know you're gone for 6 weeks at a time, but why do you take 3 suitcases? One of them is a 3-month supply of my supplements. They say, "Well, you're only gone for 6 weeks. Why are you taking a 3-month supply?" You ever heard of Mount Minatuba in the Philippines? When it erupted, they grounded airplanes there for 3 months. Why would I die saying, you know, I ran out and I couldn't get any more? So I take 3 months with me. That way, if UPS can't run because the grid's down or something, and I get someplace, they say, "Sorry, it didn't come, Wallach." I've got a 3-month supply with me. I pointed out to center field, I can't afford. I'm obsessive. So I'm prepared to pay extra shipping for baggage if I have to, but if I go Delta Airlines, I fly with them so much, I get 3 bags free. And so when I go Delta, which is like 90% of the time, I get my 3 bags for free. Every once in a while, they have to stick me on US Air or something like that. Then I got to pay for that 1 bag. I don't care. Okay. But my little prostate gland is little. It's healthy. It's happy. Nothing better than a happier prostate gland. Yes, sir.
The veins you were talking about in Costa Rica and in China.
I'm sorry?
The veins you were talking about, where they have the 90 central
Yeah, well,
minerals.
they don't go from one place to the other. They're kind of there locally. You know, when the Earth was solidifying, there were things happening. The Earth was going around, right? And some areas there were denser amounts of these minerals. As the Earth is going around, you put a bit of chocolate in a mixing bowl, and even don't put the blenders in there, but you turn the motor on so it's going around and around. What happens to that blob of chocolate? It starts spreading around through it, right? There's some places that have more than less, and the same principle is true. That's how that happened. And by dumb luck, some areas have a lot of something. For instance, we know there's certain areas in the world. I mean, I was taught this in 3rd grade in school. They don't teach it anymore. There are places in America that don't have much iodine in the soil, so they have high-rated goiter. The goiter belt. Hello. Do you think that's the only mineral out of the 60 that there's zones that have the U.S. Geological Survey that shows where the big concentrations of each of these essential minerals are and where they're deficient. Lo and behold, there's no selenium in the soil, high rate of muscular dystrophy, high rate of cystic fibrosis, high rate of cardiomyopathy, heart disease, high rate of MS, high rate of cataracts, all of which are selenium deficiency diseases. And so once you know, you say, well, why even worry about it? Just take them all in optimal amounts, or at least myself, I take more than optimal amounts. At minimum, I take 10 times, or some of them I take 10 times. Like arsenic, I take 10 times the minimum amount. Because there's a bell-shaped curve. That's getting up there where it's almost toxic, but I don't care. I'd rather have 10 times the minimum daily requirement. It's an essential nutrient, prevents certain types of leukemia, it'll reverse certain types of leukemia. Why do I want to wait till I get it? Some things, like, lead is thought to be toxic. It is. There's a bell-shaped curve. Not enough. You're going to get a deficiency. Your RNA won't duplicate right without lead in small amounts. You're totally lead. You notice that the FDA and the EPA never say we're going for a lead-free environment. They always say you got to be below 28 parts per million or whatever it is.
Right.
That's because you need it. You need some. There's a bell-shaped curve. You don't have any, you get this disease. There's an optimal amount, and then you get too much, it's poison. Same thing with water. There's more people in America die from water intoxication every year. Not drowning, but water intoxication. They drink too much too fast. It dilutes out their potassium, and they die of heart stoppage. Water intoxication. There's more people die of that every year during hot weather than anything else.
Wow.
Water intoxication. And so nobody wants to die of something you can prevent. And so I don't recommend you take rat poison, but by taking our supplements, we've been doing this. I mean, people have been doing it for hundreds of years before we came along. The Indian tribes were using this stuff. That's how we learned about it. And so we figured out, based on animal studies and human studies, what you need to do to make this perfect. And we made it perfect. We've been doing this for 35 years. And I've been taking, at least in some cases, 28,000 times the minimum daily requirement. Some of the water soluble things like B vitamins and things. So I'm not going to get congestive heart failure. I'm not going to get Korsakoff syndrome. But yes.
I have skin problems like psoriasis.
Okay. You have gluten intolerance. You have gluten intolerance.
Uh-huh.
I know from here you also have a copper deficiency. You have a raging copper deficiency, which contributes to the skin problems. Do you also have, for instance, any spider veins or varicose veins? Spider veins?
Varicose.
Yeah.
They come and go.
Varicose, yeah. And you could even have hemorrhoids, which are varicose veins in funny places. These are all caused by copper deficiency. Even more scary, aneurysms, whether they're up here, coronary arteries, aortas, aneurysms are caused by copper deficiency. It's a breakdown of the elastic fibers in blood vessels. There's low pressure in a vein, so you get spider veins and varicose veins or hemorrhoids. There's high pressure in an artery, so you get blowouts. Called aneurysms, right? Just like you hit a chuck hole with your tire and you break the cords in there. That's caused by copper deficiency. You're at high risk for an aneurysm because you have white, gray, and silver hair. That's why you have varicose veins, because you have white, gray, and silver hair. The same thing causes white, gray, and silver hair. Copper deficiency causes aneurysm. Now, you're at high risk for Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, which is the name for human version of mad cow disease. Mad cow disease is not caused by prions, it's caused by copper deficiency. Okay. All this stuff is coming out in this book.
What do you recommend? Do you have products?
Well, yeah. We have you're a big guy, you want 2 healthy I'd have you take 2 healthy heart and brain packs or 2 healthy start packs, and then you throw in 3 of our selenium 3 times a day. Why selenium? It's not a selenium deficiency, it's a copper deficiency. Well, we put lots of copper in our selenium because it's a cofactor necessary for the selenium to work properly. So that's how you're going to get the most selenium, is by taking 6 of our selenium a day. The most copper is to take 3 selenium at breakfast and dinner. That's 2 bottles a month. And I would take 2 of the healthy heart and brain packs or 2 healthy start packs per month, plus the extra copper, which is in the selenium. Your hair color will come back. But you got to be on a gluten-free diet. The psoriasis will go away. Usually within a guy your age will be 3 to 6 months, it'll go away. But the dog in the house, the cat, everybody living in your house, wife, sister, kids, grandkids, grandma, mother-in-law, everybody's got to be gluten-free. Because just cross-contamination of laundry, the couch, the rug, the food preparation surface will get you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good. Who has not asked you a question yet? Yes?
I have a friend who has a brain tumor,
Okay.
benign, and the doctor said that she should just wait until like vision is blurry or something, but is there something she could do?
Absolutely. Now, I'm assuming this is in the pituitary gland. You know, the benign tumors are in the pituitary gland. How old is this person?
39.
Okay. Is it male or female? Female. Now, does she have any other sort of problems that may or may not be related to this? Like, does she drip milk out of her breast? Does she have high blood pressure? Does she have diabetes? No? Just this enlargement in her brain?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so here's what I would do. Get her on a gluten-free diet. Anything going on with the brain, you got to get them on a gluten-free diet. No wheat, barley, rye, and oats. No fried foods, no processed meats with nitrates and nitrites, no oils. What does she weigh? Is she big or little?
Maybe 160.
160, okay.
160, like,
Then she needs 2 healthy heart and brain packs per month. Right? And they know what this is. 2 healthy heart and brain packs per month, 1 full dose at breakfast, 1 bolus at dinner. Now here's the secret sauce for this girl. Additionally, she's going to need 12 HGH a day, 6 at breakfast and 6 at bedtime with a glass of water. I take 6 twice a day. Why do I do that? Because I don't want these problems. I don't want milk dripping on my breast. You know, I don't want these problems. You see, these little kids, I get called by distraught grandmothers and mothers every week. I got a 4-year-old granddaughter. The pediatrician says she's got a brain tumor and her pituitary is benign. They want to crack her head open and take her pituitary gland out. And I said, well, before you consider that, let me offer you an option. I have to ask you one question. Is your granddaughter or your daughter on soy milk? Oh, yeah, she was colicky, which tells me she had a gluten intolerance. She's colicky, and so we had to put her, she couldn't tolerate breast milk or formula, so we put her on soy milk. She got on soy milk for her whole life. Well, guess what's in soy milk? Phytoestrogens, the stuff you give postmenopausal women. Why would you give a 4-year-old girl or a 4-year-old boy the same thing you give a postmenopausal woman for phytoestrogens? It's an insane thing. Now, tofu, which is fermented soy, doesn't give the problem. There's no problem like that in China. When you give them soy milk, it's a totally different problem because it's not fermented. So got to get off the soy milk, all soy, okay? And that double dose of it'll say 6 capsules a day. She's going to go through 2 canisters a month of the HGH. 6 in the morning with a glass of water, 6 at bedtime with a glass of water. It'll give the pituitary everything it needs for raw materials, but she's got to take a gluten-free diet so she can absorb it, right? It'll all go away. But I'm glad the doctor said he's smarter than the average bear because he said, let's not be hasty here, let's wait. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Wallach, our new thing is coming out tomorrow. How many would a person take if they already have a cancer problem, pancreas cancer? How many would they take?
If a person already has a cancer problem, I would kind of double or triple the dose because this stuff is designed to knock off the bad cells and support longevity and health of the good cells, which sort of crowd out the bad stuff, right? So depending on what they weigh, I'd have them take 2 healthy start packs per month. If they weigh 150 to 220 pounds, if they weigh 300 pounds, it'd be 3 healthy start packs. They need 3 selenium twice a day per 100 pounds of body weight. I'd also give them the I've got to be careful not name the product. The Z radical, which is a different thing. I'd give them 2 ounces a day per 100 pounds of body weight. If they get diarrhea, cut it to 1 a day, but start them out with 2 twice a day. The Z radical. And then when this new product comes out tomorrow, I'd order that for them immediately and at least give them 4 a day, 2 twice a day. That'd be minimum. I'd go whatever they can afford comfortably.
More wouldn't hurt.
Nope. Remember, there's a bell-shaped curve, and we're talking about, based on cell cultures, we're talking about the average dose that did the job here. Myself, I'm pointing out the center field, so I'm doubling and tripling and 128,000 times, and that kind of stuff. I wouldn't do 28,000 times the minimum dose of arsenic. That'd be too much. That'd probably knock me off. But I can do 10 times the minimum daily requirement of arsenic.
That new product, you have the name for it already?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's patented, trademarked, but I can't give it out until tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Under you thought you'd get me, didn't you?
No. Write it down.
Yeah, among friends, yeah, right.
How is rice milk and almond milk by comparison to soy?
Okay, it should be against the law for them to be called milk.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of poor people who cause malnutrition to their kids. Oh, they're allergic to milk, so I gave them almond milk.
Mm-hmm.
No supplementation. The kid winds up with every disease you can think of. Because there's fat and calories and maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of that in there, but it's not the equivalent of nutrition of milk. So it should be against the law to call soy milk, almond milk, rice milk, milk. It should be rice drink, almond drink, or something like that.
Sure. But
That's one of my pet peeves.
is soy worse than almond and rice, or can you say? Or
Well, you can't say. It depends where it was grown.
okay. Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be used as a formula replacement for babies. I'd go from cow's milk or breast milk to goat's milk. Goat's milk is actually designed for a 4-pound baby, so it's actually much better. Goat's milk is actually much better for human babies than is cow's milk, which is designed for a 40-pound baby.
Mm-hmm.
Our babies can't drink enough cow's milk to get enough. Where goat's milk, they can, because it's very concentrated for small babies. Make sense? Okay.
You mentioned this product coming out tomorrow. Is there a website we can go to
That'll be the name of the product.
What letter does it start with? What letter does it start with? Come on, tell us the letter it starts with.
The name of the manuscript that you're talking about, the paper that you wrote, the 1,200-page paper that's in the Smithsonian.
Oh, the book that's in the Smithsonian Institute, 1,200 pages, is considered a national treasure according to the Smithsonian Institute. In fact, I didn't show it to you, but these books are now selling for $10,000 a book on Amazon.com. The cheapest ones are like $400 to $800. These are beat up and the covers are falling off. Well, they're pristine, still. The cover never been opened up and it's still in a plastic bag. $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 per book. We sold them when we first printed them by W.B. Saunders, which was the top medical text publication company back then.
Where can I read it? I mean, without
many
paying.
libraries have it.
Libraries?
But they probably won't let you take it out anymore because it's so valuable. They'll probably make you read it in there.
Right.
But if you can find one online at Amazon.com for less than $300, I'd get it.
What's it called again?
It's called The Diseases of Exotic Animals.
The Diseases of Exotic Animals.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not about pole dancers. I had one guy ask me that.
No, not at all.
Okay, one last question from somebody that hasn't asked one. Anybody hasn't asked a question? Okay.